Chapter 364. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that can't be found online. The bracelet was already put on, but Xiao Liulong's hand still didn't let go of her wrist. Her light wrist fell into his palm. It was so soft that he couldn't help but want to gently knead it. This snow-white and delicate wrist ignited a ball of raging flames in his chest, burning his blood and qi to the point of surging. If it was a year ago, Xiao Liulang would have immediately let go, but now he couldn't let go. He had never experienced such a thing, nor had he gone to a place he shouldn't go. But occasionally Feng Lin would talk about men's topics in front of him and Lin Qingye. He knew that it was normal for men to have such thoughts, but he wasn't sure if his feelings for her were just a man's instinct, or if he really had feelings for her. Does it look good? Gu Jiao tilted her head and looked at him. Caught off guard, Xiao Liulang panicked as if his thoughts had been seen through. His throat moved, and he quickly let go of her hand. It looks good. Gu Jiao raised her left wrist and gently fiddled with the small jade stone on the red string with her right hand. I think it looks good too. Xiao Liulang saw that she really liked it, and the corners of his mouth unconsciously curled up. Then Xiao Liulang saw her turn around and put away the jewelry on the table. Any of those jewelry was more expensive than the red string, but she only wore the one he gave her. Xiao Liulang's eyes flashed with a trace of emotion that he didn't notice. Gu Jiao closed the box and opened the cabinet door. She planned to put it in the highest drawer, but she found that she was too short to reach it. Xiao Liulang walked over and was about to help her put it up, but she jumped on the spot and put the box down. After putting it down, Gu Jiao saw Xiao Liulang's hand frozen in the air. She rolled her eyes and jumped up to sweep the box down. Oh, I didn't put it down properly. Xiao Liulang. Xiao Liulang put the box down. He was tall and had long arms, so he put the box in a very deep place without much effort. What Xiao Liulang didn't know was that when Gu Jiao looked up and saw him do all this, she was shocked in her heart. She clearly remembered that when she first moved to Clearwater Alley, he couldn't reach this place, and he only had the air of a young boy. But at that moment, she had clearly felt the charm and aura of an adult man. Gu Jiao's Gu Jiao's, S Jiao's and Guz's. The bed in the west room hadn't been fixed yet, so Xiao Liulang was still sleeping in the east room tonight. Gu Jiao fell asleep with her head against the pillow as usual. Xiao Liulang didn't fall asleep so quickly. He lay beside Gu Jiao and calculated the ancestral ratio in his mind. Suddenly, a small arm came over and pressed on his chest, interrupting his thoughts. The weather was dry, so they had to be careful of candles. In order to avoid accidental fires, it was best for them to sleep far away. He gently put her little arm down. But the next second, her leg was on top of him again. Xiao Liulang took a deep breath and helplessly put her leg down gently. But not long after, her whole body was on top of him. Her body was on her side, and her little head was in his arms. Husband! She called out in a daze. Xiao Liulang's hand paused, and he stopped pushing her away. He looked down at her, and found that she was sleeping soundly. That husband, just now was just her sleep talk. Xiao Liulang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But she called out to him in her dreams. Didn't that mean that this girl also had some feelings for him? She didn't call out to Jing Kong in her dreams, did she? Jing Kong. Gu Jiao called out in a daze. Xiao Liulang. The moon was dark and the wind was strong. The entire imperial city was asleep. But in Pure Flower's palace, the emperor was tossing and turning, unable to sleep. Your Majesty. Eunuch Wei walked over with a lantern. You can't sleep again? Do you want this servant to call for an imperial physician? The emperor slept in Jade Water Alley for a night, and then slept peacefully for the next few days. But tonight he found it hard to sleep again. The emperor sat up and waved his hand. No need. The imperial physician's medicine won't be effective, Eunuch Wei said. Then this servant will have the imperial kitchen make something for you to eat. We can't eat. The emperor got off the dragon bed. We will look at the memorials for a while, Eunuch Wei earnestly advised. Your Majesty, don't look at them. Even if you can't sleep, you should lie down. You're resting after all. The emperor sat down behind the desk. What's the point of lying down and not sleeping? Stop wasting time and bring the memorials. Yes. Eunuch Wei helplessly agreed. He personally went to the imperial study and brought back a stack of memorials. The emperor pinched his swollen eyebrows and began to read through one of the memorials. Eunuch Wei saw that the emperor's complexion wasn't good, so he still secretly had someone call for an imperial physician. Fortunately, he did, because just as the emperor finished reading the third memorial, he collapsed due to exhaustion. Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Eunuch Wei's voice became more and more distant. The emperor closed his eyes and fainted. The emperor was awakened by the sound of wind chimes. When he opened his eyes, he felt a glaring ray of sunlight. He raised his hand to block it. After adjusting to the light, he realized that he wasn't lying on a bed in Pure Flower's palace. This is... He sat up. Someone come. Your Majesty. It wasn't Eunuch Wei who came but Concubine Jing. Concubine Jing had changed out of her nun's clothes and was now wearing a gorgeous palace dress. Her hair had also grown long and was tied up in an exquisite bun. She wore a high hat and a wide belt. Your Majesty, you're awake. Concubine Jing sat down by the bed and looked at him with concern. Concubine Mother Jing. The emperor looked at her in a daze. Where is this? Concubine Jing smiled gently. Your Majesty has been unconscious for so long. I'm afraid you're confused. This is Pure Flower's palace. How did Pure Flower's palace become like this? What happened? The emperor looked at Concubine Jing in confusion. Concubine Jing waved her hand at a palace servant, who presented a bowl of medicine. Concubine Jing picked up the bowl and fed the emperor a spoonful. Your Majesty, it's time to drink your medicine. The emperor looked at the bowl of black medicine. Suddenly, something seemed to be wriggling in the bowl. A trace of extreme fear flashed through the emperor's heart. What's wrong? Your Majesty, drink your medicine. Concubine Jing looked at him in confusion. The emperor looked at Concubine Jing, then at the wriggling medicine in the bowl. He was so disgusted that his stomach churned. He knocked over the bowl and got out of bed. However, he didn't have much strength left. His legs gave out, and he fell to the ground. Concubine Jing looked down at him from above. She grabbed his chin and poured the terrifying medicine down his throat. No! The emperor shuddered and opened his eyes. He broke out in a cold sweat as he looked at the familiar canopy, and then at the familiar bed. It was his bed. It was Pure Flower's palace. He sat up and wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. He actually had a nightmare again. But wasn't he reviewing memorials? Why was he lying on his bed? Your Majesty! Eunuch Wei lifted the bright yellow canopy and hung it on a hook. You fainted while reviewing memorials. You scared this servant to death. The emperor rubbed his chest with lingering fear. Eunuch Wei looked at the emperor with a complicated expression. Your Majesty, did you have a nightmare again? The emperor said indifferently, I'm fine. What time is it? Shouldn't we be going to morning court? How is this fine? He was drenched in cold sweat. Eunuch Wei said with heartache, Your Majesty, you can't keep tormenting your body like this. When the imperial physician took your pulse, he said that your body is severely damaged and that you should rest more. You shouldn't worry about the morning court. That won't do. Cough, cough, cough. The emperor coughed violently halfway through his words. Where's the medicine? Is it ready? Eunuch Wei hurriedly urged the young eunuch in the hall. The young eunuch quickly said, This servant will go take a look now. The medicine is here. Accompanied by a familiar voice, a bowl of steaming hot medicinal soup was presented before the emperor. The emperor coughed violently as he reached out to take the medicine. However, when he saw the hand holding the bowl, his body suddenly froze. He followed the hand and looked at the person's face. That concerned expression overlapped with the face in his dream. The black medicine seemed to have moved a little. The emperor's expression changed abruptly, and he knocked the bowl over just like in his dream. The boiling medicine splashed all over old Concubine Jing, who cried out from the heat. The back of her hand and wrist turned red instantly. Old Concubine! Granny Kai was shocked. The emperor jumped off the bed and retreated to a distance of at least 10 steps away from old Concubine Jing. as if he was avoiding the plague. Old concubine Jing held the back of her hand and looked at the emperor with hurt in her eyes. Your Majesty, it's me. The emperor couldn't tell if this was reality or a dream. He gasped for air and looked at old concubine Jing with fear and vigilance. Eunuch Wei was dumbfounded by this scene. What was going on? Why was His Majesty suddenly treating the old concubine like this? Your Majesty. Eunuch Wei cautiously walked forward. Old concubine Jing also stood up and walked toward the emperor with red eyes. Don't let her come here, the emperor shouted. Eunuch Wei and the other eunuchs and maids looked at each other, not understanding what was going on. At this time, Eunuch Qin's voice came from outside the hall. The Empress Dowager has arrived. The eunuchs all knelt on the ground. Eunuch Wei also hurriedly knelt down. When Empress Dowager Zhuang, dressed in a phoenix robe, walked into Pure Flower's palace's bedchamber with an imposing aura, the emperor pounced over without even thinking. Imperial Mother, save me. He jumped into Empress Dowager Zhuang's arms in front of everyone. Empress Dowager Zhuang was almost knocked down by him. What the hell are you doing at your age? Do you still think you're little Jing Kong? Don't you know how heavy you are? Empress Dowager Zhuang raised her index finger and pushed the emperor's head away from her arms. However, the emperor hugged her tightly and wouldn't let go. Imperial Mother! Imperial Mother! Empress Dowager Zhuang rolled her eyes in disgust. Old concubine Jing clenched her fingers as she watched this scene. No one dared to pull the emperor away. And Empress Dowager Zhuang couldn't push him away herself. She was hugged by the emperor for a long time. Perhaps it was because Empress Dowager Zhuang had a calming aura, but the emperor's emotions gradually calmed down. The fear in his heart gradually dissipated, and he gradually regained his rationality. He finally realized what he had done. He let go of Empress Dowager Zhuang and abruptly retreated a few steps. He lost his balance and fell to the ground. Fortunately, Eunuch Wei's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast enough to support him. He awkwardly grabbed Eunuch Wei's hand and stood up. He was so embarrassed that he wanted to crawl into a hole. He actually hugged this vicious woman and called her Imperial Mother. Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at him with disdain. What kind of madness is the emperor having this morning? The emperor choked. As expected of a vicious woman. Even her words were so vicious. He must have been crazy to jump into this vicious woman's arms. It was so embarrassing. Old concubine Jing said sadly and worriedly. His Majesty had a nightmare and was frightened. He didn't scare the Empress Dowager, right? Eunuch Wei frowned. How did the imperial concubine know that His Majesty had a nightmare? Empress Dowager Zhuang rolled her eyes at the emperor. I didn't scare her, but I felt disgusted. The emperor gritted his teeth in anger. Your Majesty, are you all right? Old concubine Jing looked at him uneasily. Now that the emperor had regained his rationality, he naturally wouldn't confuse reality with dreams. He looked at the reddened back of concubine Jing's hand and felt a pang of guilt. He walked over and said, It's my fault for hurting Mother. Old concubine Jing shook her head. It's just a small injury. It's nothing compared to His Majesty's body. She then looked at Granny Kai. His Majesty's medicine has spilled. Go and pour a new bowl. Remember, don't make it too hot this time. Yes, Granny Kai complied. Eunuch Wei thought for a bit. This servant will do it. All right. Old concubine Jing nodded. Eunuch Wei personally brought the medicine over. I'll do it, old concubine Jing said. Eunuch Wei thought about how he was the one who brought the medicine here. It was brewed by Pure Flower's palace and didn't count as outside food, so it should be fine. Moreover, he was the one who personally handed it to the imperial concubine. No one would have the chance to do anything to it. Old concubine Jing helped the emperor onto the imperial bed and had him sit up against a pillow. Eunuch Wei handed the medicine over to old concubine Jing. Old concubine Jing calmly took the bowl and stirred it with a spoon. The emperor said, "Will do it myself." "Let me do it." Old concubine Jing scooped up a spoonful with a smile and fed it to the emperor. The emperor didn't really want concubine Jing to feed him medicine, but he had embarrassed the old concubine in front of so many people. If he were to refuse now, everyone in the 6 palaces would think that he was tired of the old concubine. He sighed helplessly and opened his mouth to drink. Empress Dowager Zhuang suddenly said, "Wait! The latest chapter isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896428226/111268118. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion's mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 365. The latest chapter isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are available here. The emperor reluctantly closed his mouth and glanced impatiently at Empress Dowager Zhuang. What does this vicious woman want to do now? She didn't let his lady mother feed him medicine. Does she want his lady mother to live a good life? Empress Dowager Zhuang walked over with an arrogant expression and said to concubine Jing, who was sitting on the dragon bed, "Give the medicine to me. I'll feed him." As soon as he said this, everyone in the hall was shocked. Although it was disrespectful. Was the Empress Dowager crazy? Why would she want to feed His Majesty medicine? It was already merciful of her not to poison His Majesty to death. No, the relationship between the Empress Dowager and His Majesty seemed to have eased recently. They could often see the mother being kind and the son being filial. It was said that they didn't quarrel in court anymore. The officials of the two factions were so bored that they almost dug out a two-room residence in the throne room with their toes. It was just that the two had been fighting for so long that the palace servants couldn't get used to their sudden reconciliation. They thought they were still at odds with each other. No need to trouble the Empress Dowager. "I'll do it," concubine Jing said gently from the dragon bed. That's right, he didn't want to drink the medicine fed by this vicious woman. Empress Dowager Zhuang looked down at her. "Your clothes are so wet. Aren't you worried about catching a cold? Isn't your body weak?" Only then did the emperor remember that he had knocked over the bowl of medicine and caused Mother Consort Jing's hand to be injured. He must have been scared silly by the nightmare and had forgotten such an important matter after going through his mind once. He looked at concubine Jing's red hand and wet clothes and said guiltily, "Lady Mother, quickly go back and change clothes. Eunuch Wei. This servant is here." Eunuch Wei walked forward with his horsetail whisk and bowed. "Your Majesty," the emperor said, "send my lady mother back to the nunnery. Also, remember to send someone to call the imperial physician and have him take a look at my lady mother." Eunuch Wei replied, "Yes." He turned to concubine Jing. "Imperial concubine, please." At this point, concubine Jing had no choice but to leave. Nanny Kai glanced at concubine Dowager, clenched her fists, and a trace of anxiety flashed across her eyes. Concubine Jing, however, stood up unhurriedly and handed the bowl of medicine to the Empress Dowager. Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't move. Eunuch Qin went to pick her up. If Marquis Xianpinghe was a professional at bullying others, then Zhuang Jins was also a professional at crushing others. She didn't deserve to receive the things handed over by an old concubine. Grand concubine Jing clenched her fists so hard that her knuckles turned white. The emperor was furious. This vicious woman was here to embarrass Mother Jing. Ah! Grand concubine Jing's hand slipped, and the bowl slipped from Eunuch Qin's fingertips and fell onto the foot of the bed. The footrest was made of wood, so the medicine bowl did not break, but it was completely overturned. The medicine juice splashed all over the floor, and several drops even splashed on Empress Dowager Zhuang's luxurious and exquisite robe. "Your Majesty!" Eunuch Qin was the most miserable. He was the closest and his shoes were all wet. However, he didn't care about himself and hurriedly bent down to wipe Empress Dowager Zhuang's phoenix robe. "No need, get up." Empress Dowager Zhuang said calmly. "Mother, are you all right?" the emperor asked worriedly. Eunuch Qin secretly curled his lips. Grand concubine Jing wasn't even as wet as the Empress Dowager. She didn't care about the Empress Dowager, but instead cared about Grand Concubine Jing. Didn't she see that she was the one who spilled the medicine? Grand Concubine Jing said in shame, "I'm fine. I'm so useless that I can't even carry a bowl of medicine properly." The emperor couldn't bear to see her sad. "Mother's injuries haven't healed yet." Empress Dowager Zhuang coldly interrupted the emperor. "You know you're useless, so why are you still standing here? Hurry up and back down." Grand Concubine Jing was stunned. The emperor, Granny Kai, and the others were also shocked. Empress Dowager Zhuang and Grand Concubine Jing had been at odds for a long time, but it was the first time that Empress Dowager Zhuang had spoken so harshly to Grand Concubine Jing in front of everyone. Even when they met in the Imperial Garden last time, Empress Dowager Zhuang had only ignored Grand Concubine Jing. The emperor's face darkened. Grand Concubine Jing lowered her eyes and said softly, "Your Majesty is right. I'll leave now." Grand Concubine Jing's expression was very calm. She didn't cry or show weakness, but everyone could feel her grievance. The emperor's face darkened even more. Grand Concubine Jing was escorted out of the bedchamber by Eunuch Wei. Eunuch Qin personally went to bring a new bowl of medicine. Empress Dowager Zhuang reluctantly took the bowl with a look of disgust. The emperor was furious. "You disdain it?" "I disdain it." But he remembered that the two of them were pretending to be at peace, so he couldn't break with her in front of everyone. He said to the servants in the hall, "Leave." Yes. The servants left one by one. Only Eunuch Qin stayed by Empress Dowager Zhuang's side. He was in the know, so the emperor didn't mind his presence. Well, there was no one else. The emperor was about to find the Empress Dowager to settle the score with Grand Concubine Jing. Unexpectedly, his hand sank. Empress Dowager Zhuang had stuffed the bowl of medicine into his hand. Empress Dowager Zhuang said indifferently, "Drink it yourself." With that, she left without looking back. The emperor was speechless. Empress Dowager Zhuang returned to Renshou Palace. Little Jing Kong didn't have classes today, but he went to find Qin Chiyu. So Renshou Palace was quite quiet for the time being. Empress Dowager Zhuang's flowers and plants had been ruined by the little monk again. Empress Dowager Zhuang was heartbroken. Gu Jiao came out with the watering can she made herself. "Great aunt." "Humph." Empress Dowager Zhuang snorted and reached out her hand. "My candied plums." Gu Jiao put down the watering can, opened her purse, took out the box of candied plums, and counted 5 for her great aunt. Empress Dowager Zhuang said with a dark face, "I said I'd add one more. Otherwise, who would be willing to compete with Grand Concubine Jing for the medicine?" "Okay." Gu Jiao rummaged through the box and found the smallest candied plum to give to Empress Dowager Zhuang. Oh. This action was quite familiar. She seemed to have seen it somewhere before. Gu Jiao couldn't remember it at the moment. Empress Dowager Zhuang's eyelids twitched. "Jiao Jiao, you've changed. You're a miser. You gave me such a small candied plum." Empress Dowager Zhuang was so heartbroken that she couldn't breathe. She took the candied plum and went back to the study angrily. She closed the door and found the candied plum jar. Fortunately, she still had some private collection. "Miss Gu." Outside the hall, Eunuch Qin asked about Pure Flowers Palace. "Why did you let the Empress Dowager compete with Grand Concubine Jing for the medicine?" The relationship between the Empress Dowager and His Majesty has been progressing well recently. Even without this, it's enough to gain their trust. Gu Jiao went to the palace early in the morning, but before she could talk about the drugging, she heard a spy from Pure Flowers Palace report that His Majesty had fainted and Grand Concubine Jing had gone to Pure Flowers Palace in the middle of the night. This was the best time to make a move. Gu Jiao guessed that Grand Concubine Jing wouldn't let go of this opportunity, so she quickly had her great-aunt go to Pure Flowers Palace as well. It's not like she has to fight for the medicine. In Gu Jiao's opinion, it wasn't important whether her great-aunt fed the medicine to the emperor or not. The important thing was to stop Grand Concubine Jing from doing so. Gu Jiao asked, "Did she knock over the bowl of medicine in her hand?" Eunuch Qin was shocked. "Yes. How did you know? Did the spy report it just now?" "No." Gu Jiao shook her head. Eunuch Qin was even more confused now. Eunuch Qin was a trustworthy person, so there was nothing that couldn't be said to him. Gu Jiao then told him about how she found the guiding drug on Eunuch Wei's body yesterday. Eunuch Qin was shocked and only came back to his senses after a while. Miss Gu, you mean, the relationship between His Majesty and the Empress Dowager became so strained because Grand Concubine Jing drugged him? His Majesty listens to Grand Concubine Jing's every word because he was drugged? This is too. It was too shocking. There was actually such a terrifying drug in the world. No, it should be said that Grand Concubine Jing would do such a terrifying thing to His Majesty. She had raised him single-handedly. Apart from the fact that he wasn't born from her womb, he was no different from her own flesh and blood. Moreover, His Majesty did view her as his own mother. There was no need for him to do such a thing. This was also what Gu Jiao was puzzled about. Why would Grand Concubine Jing drug the emperor with two different drugs at the same time? Drugging the emperor to make him hate her great-aunt, and use this to sow discord between the two of them was somewhat plausible. But it also didn't make much sense. Her great-aunt held court behind the curtain and dominated the court. No matter how one looked at it, she had crossed the emperor's bottom line. Therefore, even if she hadn't been drugged, the emperor still wouldn't have tolerated her. As for the drug, there was even less of a need. The emperor was a sentimental person. He would even treat Eunuch Wei well, let alone his mother who had raised him. The emperor would definitely treat Grand Concubine Jing well, and be close to her. Gu Jiao murmured. Did something happen between them? Eunuch Qin looked pensive. Miss Gu, are you referring to His Majesty and the Empress Dowager? Gu Jiao said. There's also Grand Concubine Jing. I have a feeling that things aren't that simple. Her great-aunt held court behind the curtain, so there's no way His Majesty wouldn't have a strained relationship with her. Drugging her to sow discord was an unnecessary move, unless what? Eunuch Qin asked anxiously. Gu Jiao said seriously, unless something happened that made Grand Concubine Jing feel that the relationship between His Majesty and her great-aunt was unshakable. Even if she held court behind the curtain, His Majesty still wouldn't break with her. What kind of relationship could be so strong in this world? Digression. Short Little June came out today recommended Jean Yu's new article. The imperial exam brings fortune to the wife in the palm of the hand. Lu Weiwei stepped onto the path of no return for the imperial exam, and vowed to make a name for herself. It was just that there seemed to be a lot of obstacles on her path. Apart from all kinds of top-notch items, there was also a certain heir's face turned suspiciously red. Lu Wei, as long as it's you, I'm willing to turn gay for love. Spoiling daddy. Good girl, daddy's everything is yours. Why do you have to work so hard? Lu Weiwei was expressionless. I only have one thing on my mind, and that's to take the imperial exam. No one can stop me from taking the exam. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that you can't find online. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_896428226/111240564. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Biku Pavilion's mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 366. The latest chapter isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with a deeper meaning that can't be found online can be found here. Gu Jiao was someone who had been abandoned by her biological parents in a corner. To her knowledge, no relationship was solid, and trust between people didn't come from the relationship itself. Her world was very simple. It was either black or white, and all solidity came from mutual love and the strength of one's heart. However, she and Yi understood that not everyone was like her. In fact, most people were different from her. They had their own standards of judgment, mixed with the complexity and balance of human nature. Gu Jiao frowned. Eunuch Qin was keenly aware of her expression and could not help but ask, Miss Gu, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell? No. Gu Jiao shook her head. This question is beyond the scope of my syllabus. I can't answer it. Eunuch Qin was speechless. However, even if she couldn't answer it, it wouldn't affect her next step in her plan. Not everything in this world needed to be explained. Take treating a disease, for example. If a patient caught a cold, even if she didn't know how he got it, she could still cure him. The same was true for concubine Jing. Regardless of the reason she drugged the emperor, Gu Jiao wouldn't allow her to succeed again. She couldn't have bought just one pill, could she? She had knocked it over so cleanly, so she must have had a backup plan. Gu Jiao went to the study to say goodbye to her grandaunt, and then left the palace. She didn't try to hide her whereabouts, so the emperor soon got the news. The emperor thought she had come to the palace to treat his illness, so he waited expectantly for a while, only to hear that she had already left the palace. The emperor's face turned green. Eunuch Wei returned from the nunnery and reported to the emperor. Your Majesty, the imperial physician has taken a look at the concubine dowager. It's still the same old illness, but it's nothing serious. She just needs to rest. The emperor wasn't satisfied with this reply. Mother's hand was scalded. Is she really fine? Eunuch Wei replied. She's not injured, just a little red. The imperial physician has prescribed some medicine, and said she'll recover in a few days. The emperor said in a deep voice, I'm still worried. As he spoke, he was about to lift the quilt and get out of bed. Eunuch Wei hurriedly stopped him. Your Majesty, what are you doing? The emperor said. Zhen will go and see Imperial Mother. Imperial Mother was wronged in Pure Flower's palace today, and must be feeling very sad. If Zhen still doesn't appear, there will be rumors in the palace that Zhen no longer values her. Eunuch Wei had been in the palace for many years. How could he not understand this? However, the emperor's body was still weak, and the imperial physician urged him to rest well. Eunuch Wei earnestly advised, Your Majesty, your top priority is to take care of your dragon body. Imperial concubine dowager will surely sympathize with you. As for those palace servants, Imperial concubine dowager is your imperial concubine mother. Who would dare to give her any face? Except for the one in Renshou Palace. Eunuch Wei added in his heart. He continued, If you're still worried, this servant will make a few more trips for you. Eunuch Wei was the emperor's trusted aide. His appearance represented the emperor's position to a large extent. His frequent visits to the nunnery would also cause others to be wary of imperial concubine Jing. The emperor still insisted on going, but as soon as he lifted the quilt and got out of bed, he felt a wave of dizziness and fell on his butt on the dragon bed. It seemed that he wouldn't be able to go for a while. Your Majesty. Eunuch Wei helped the emperor lie down and tucked in the quilt. He suddenly thought of something and asked, Your Majesty, did you tell Imperial concubine dowager about your nightmare today? The emperor said, No, why? Eunuch Wei smiled embarrassedly. No, it's just that when the Empress Dowager came to visit your Majesty, Imperial concubine dowager immediately said that you had a nightmare. How did she know that you had a nightmare? This servant doesn't remember mentioning it to her. The emperor frowned. After a while he said carelessly, Perhaps Imperial Mother heard our conversation when she came in with the medicine. Was that so? Why did he vaguely feel that Imperial concubine dowager's expression was a bit strange at the time? Eunuch Wei didn't dare to say this. He might have seen wrongly. After Gu Jiao left the palace, she didn't go to the medical center, nor did she return to Jade Water Alley. Instead, she went to Qinghe Academy. Gu Qingfeng had just finished using the outhouse, and was still pulling up his pants when a small hand reached over and pulled him out. Gu Qingfeng's pants almost fell to the ground. He grabbed his belt tightly and looked back at the person who pulled him up the wall. He was so angry that his face turned into the color of pig liver. Stupid girl. Why do you have this kind of hobby? Peeping at men taking off their pants in broad daylight. Those who knew would say that she was their sister, but those who didn't would think that she was a thief. Gu Jiao glanced at him with disdain. Who wants to peep at you taking off your pants? Do you think you're very good looking? That little bit. That little bit. Gu Qingfeng fell from the wall with a thump. He fell outside Qinghe Academy, which was exactly what Gu Jiao wanted. Gu Jiao tiptoed and landed lightly beside Gu Qingfeng. She put her small hands behind her back and bent over, looking at Gu Qingfeng, who was paralyzed on the ground with no love for life. Gu Qingfeng felt that one day, when he died young, it would be because of this girl who angered him to death. Killing someone was just a matter of nodding one's head to the ground. What was the meaning of saying that he was so small? Gu Qingfeng's self-esteem as a man was ruthlessly crushed. He hated that he couldn't ask her if she was blind. He always felt that he was incomparably cruel, until one day, he accidentally caught a glimpse of Xiaoliulang's. Since then, he didn't say anything. Gu Jiao didn't go to the outhouse to catch him on purpose. There were too many people in Qinghe Academy, and Gu Yan's shadow could be seen everywhere. This was probably the telepathy between the twins. As soon as she got close, Gu Yan would sense it. There was only one place where Gu Yan wouldn't come to find her, and that was a man's outhouse. The result proved that Gu Yan still underestimated his sister's thick skin. Gu Jiao wasn't obsessed with cleanliness, but she still threw Gu Qingfeng to the river to wash his hands. Gu Qingfeng, who was repeatedly despised. After sitting in the carriage, Gu Qingfeng asked Gu Jiao, "I disappeared from the academy without even saying goodbye. This has a bad influence. I'm a student, and I have to study." Gu Jiao took out a banknote worth 500 taels and put it on the table. Gu Qingfeng opened his mouth and said, "Even if the academy doesn't pursue the matter, when it reaches my grandfather's ears, I can't avoid punishment." Gu Jiao took out another banknote worth 500 taels and put it on the table. Gu Qingfeng silently put the banknote away. "It doesn't matter if it's a banknote or not. I just want to help you. Tell me, where do you want to go this time?" Gu Jiao, the Imperial Palace. Gu Qingfeng suddenly felt the banknote in his bosom heat up. Was it too late for him to regret it now? Gu Jiao entered the palace openly, but Gu Qingfeng wasn't so lucky. He was an outsider and it wasn't easy for him to enter the inner palace. He also didn't have any open relations with Renshou Palace, so the Empress Dowager wouldn't summon him. The Emperor also had no reason to see the second young master of Marquis Ding and Fu. More importantly, he couldn't expose his identity. He could only grit his teeth and climb over the high palace walls. The two met near the nunnery. Gu Jiao had just arrived when Gu Qingfeng also arrived. Gu Jiao raised her eyebrows. His movements were very fast. He was very skilled. "You've been to the Imperial Palace?" Gu Jiao asked. "How is that possible? Do you think the Imperial Palace is a place you can casually enter?" Gu Qingfeng took out a map from his bosom. "This. A map of the Imperial Palace." Gu Jiao's eyes widened. "How do you have this?" Gu Qingfeng chuckled and said, "My father is the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Works. All of the large and small halls in the Imperial Palace are maintained by the Ministry of Works. Even the Imperial Concubine Dowager's nunnery was built by the Ministry of Works. So this guy knew the layout of the various government offices like the back of his hand. Coming and going without a trace. Was it all because he stole his father's map?" Gu Qingfeng coldly said. "He's also your father. Delicate father. Hee. Gu Qingfeng, forget it. She's not the real Gu Jiao's mother. What do you want to steal from the Imperial Palace?" Gu Qingfeng was actually very puzzled. This girl was doted on by the Empress Dowager and highly regarded by the Emperor. What kind of treasure could she not have? Did she need to steal it herself? Gu Jiao didn't answer and brought him near the nunnery. Seeing the simple and unadorned nunnery, Gu Qingfeng fell into confusion. "What is there to steal from a nunnery?" Gu Jiao asked. "There are dragon shadow guards inside. Can you go in?" Gu Qingfeng almost peed himself. He exploded. What did you say? Dragon shadow guards?" Gu Jiao found it strange. "You know about them?" Gu Qingfeng snorted. "I'm the #1 bandit in the Zhao Kingdom. How could I not know about the dragon shadow guards? They are the men of sacrifice of the previous emperor. Their martial arts are top-notch and they are very talented. Almost no one in the world is their match. Oh my, it's just a nunnery. Why would there be dragon shadow guards guarding it? Oh, I forgot that this guy doesn't know about Imperial Concubine Jing." Gu Qingfeng looked pensive. "Did His Majesty send them? Isn't His Majesty a bit too filial to Imperial Concubine Jing?" Even the dragon shadow guards were sent out because he was afraid that the Empress Dowager would harm her. Listen, the whole world thought that Grandaunt would harm Imperial Concubine Jing, but no one thought that Imperial Concubine Jing would harm Grandaunt. Gu Qingfeng asked. What do you want to steal from her? Gu Jiao. Medicine. Medicine? Gu Qingfeng looked her up and down and said suspiciously, You're a doctor yourself. Do you need to steal other people's medicine? Can we go in or not? Gu Jiao was irritated. I've never tried. Gu Qingfeng had never even been to the imperial palace, let alone a nunnery guarded by dragon shadow guards. She couldn't beat him in a fight. But when it came to hiding one's aura, Gu Qingfeng looked deeply at the little girl beside him, then looked up at the sky and sighed helplessly. To be honest, if he were to die one day, it would either be because this girl angered him to death, or because she caused his death. Gu Qingfeng put his arm around Gu Jiao's slender waist. Don't make a sound and don't breathe later. Gu Jiao nodded. Gu Qingfeng looked at the nunnery that looked like a dragon's den and a tiger's den. His eyes narrowed, then he took Gu Jiao and sneaked in. Gu Jiao didn't expect him to be able to bring her in under the watchful eyes of the dragon shadow guards. Even the old duke couldn't avoid alerting the dragon shadow guards when he was alone. Gu Jiao suddenly had a new understanding of Gu Qingfeng. This guy's qinggong was really good. The nunnery that had been built at the last minute wasn't too big, and the terrain wasn't complicated. Gu Qingfeng found Concubine Jing's room without much effort. Perhaps the two were lucky that Concubine Jing wasn't in the room at the moment. She had gone to the small Buddhist hall to chant sutras. Gu Qingfeng took Gu Jiao into the room. What do the medicine you're looking for look like? Gu Qingfeng asked. I don't know. She forgot to ask Madame Nan. But she's not a doctor, so she shouldn't have a lot of medicine. Find them all. The two began to rummage through the room. Soon, they found some ointment for burns and wound, as well as some pills that replenished qi and blood. There wasn't anything that Gu Jiao hadn't seen before. She couldn't have brought it with her, could she? Gu Jiao murmured. As soon as she said that, Gu Qingfeng patted her shoulder and motioned for her to look at the wardrobe. Gu Jiao's gaze fell on the wardrobe. It looked ordinary, but for some reason, it gave Gu Jiao a feeling that something was wrong. Gu Qingfeng whispered. You also think it looks strange, don't you? Gu Jiao nodded. She stared at the wardrobe for a while, but she didn't go closer. Instead, she took a few steps back. She said, I know what's wrong. The pattern on the wardrobe door is reversed. The pattern on each side of the two wardrobe doors was supposed to face each other to form a full moon. But now the two halves of the moon were facing each other with their backs facing each other. It made people feel uncomfortable, and they didn't want to look at it a second time. Gu Jiao walked forward and touched the halves of the moon with both hands. With a twist, the two halves of the moon were straightened, forming a full moon. With a click, the wardrobe door opened. Gu Qingfeng had opened this wardrobe before, and it was filled with clothes. But now it was in a different state. The wardrobe door was very thick, and it was almost open together with the wardrobe. And at the innermost side there was a hidden compartment embedded in the wall. Gu Qingfeng's arms were long. He opened the hidden compartment and took out a small box. Someone's coming, Gu Jiao suddenly said. Gu Qingfeng didn't have time to open the small box, and he couldn't take it away. Otherwise, if someone found out that it was missing and alerted the Shadow Dragon guards, they would be dead. Gu Qingfeng put the small box back, closed the wardrobe door and restored the pattern. He took Gu Jiao and used Qinggong to go up to the roof beam. The door was pushed open. Nurse Kai walked in. All right, just give me the Nyang Nyang's clothes. Go and see if the medicine for the Nyang Nyang is ready. Yes. The two accompanying little nuns handed the dried clothes to Nanny Kai and turned around to leave. Nurse Kai closed the door and went to the wardrobe. She opened the wardrobe door and put the clothes inside. Then she closed the wardrobe door and turned to leave. But after taking 2 steps, she turned back and looked at the wardrobe with a frown. On the roof beam, Gu Jiao and Gu Qingfeng held their breaths. No way. She found out that the wardrobe had been touched so quickly. Gu Jiao pinched a silver needle between her fingers. Nurse Kai reversed the pattern and opened the secret door of the wardrobe. She moved a stool, stood on it, took out the small box and checked the contents. Gu Jiao looked down. There were 2 medicine bottles, one black and one white. Good heavens, it was really here. Granny Kai took out the 2 medicine bottles and put the small box back. No way. She wanted to take the medicine away? Nurse Kai came to the door. Gu Jiao slowly raised the silver needle in her hand. Gu Qingfeng grabbed her wrist. She would be exposed. The Shadow Dragon guards were not to be trifled with. As soon as Gu Jiao made a move, the Shadow Dragon guards would immediately notice. Do you want the medicine or your life? Gu Jiao's movements when she killed people would not be louder than their voices. However, the Shadow Dragon guards were men of sacrifice. Their brain circuits were different from normal people. They turned a deaf ear to conversations, but were very sensitive to killing intent and martial arts. However, Nurse Kai hesitated, shook her head and sighed. She still put the medicine bottles back. After Nurse Kai left, Gu Qingfeng brought Gu Jiao back to the ground. Gu Jiao could also jump down, but she could not do it as well as Gu Qingfeng. She would be noticed by the Shadow Dragon guards. Gu Qingfeng took out the small box from the secret compartment and opened it. He said to Gu Jiao, "These 2 bottles are the medicine you are looking for?" Gu Jiao pulled out the corks of the 2 bottles and poured out 1 pill from each bottle. Gu Qingfeng said strangely, "They look the same. Why put them in 2 bottles?" They did look the same. They were both dark brown pills. Smell them. Gu Jiao put the 2 pills under Gu Qingfeng's nose. Gu Qingfeng sniffed. Yes, they are medicine. What about it? Is there a difference? Gu Jiao asked. No. Gu Qingfeng shook his head decisively. There was a difference, but it was very subtle. Those who were not proficient in medicine would not be able to tell. If Gu Qingfeng couldn't tell, then concubine Jing shouldn't be able to either. Gu Jiao's lips curled into a sinister smile. She had wanted to steal the medicine at first, but now she had changed her mind. Oh no, this girl is up to mischief again. Who knows which unlucky person is going to get into big trouble again? Gu Qingfeng shook his head and continued to study the small box. He suddenly exclaimed, "There's something else in the box." He opened the inner compartment of the box and dug out a rolled-up, bright yellow imperial edict. Gu Qingfeng was dumbfounded. Why would concubine Jing have an imperial edict? He had never heard of His Majesty giving concubine Jing an imperial edict. It was obvious that this imperial edict was quite old. Gu Qingfeng's mind flashed. I suddenly remembered something. It's just a rumor among the people. What is it? Gu Jiao asked. This girl was always so impatient. Gu Qingfeng curled his lips and said, before His Majesty passed away, he ordered Empress Dowager Zhuang to be buried with him. Concubine Jing risked her life to steal the imperial edict and burn it. That was how Empress Dowager Zhuang was saved. He suddenly laughed. Do you think the thing in the box is the one that was burned? The imperial edict that could kill Empress Dowager Zhuang? Digression. Did you guys forget that I just released a new chapter? They all urged me to release more chapters in the comment section. Great, the editor really came looking for me. Editor. Release another chapter. It doesn't need to be too much. Just twice as much as this one. Me. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896422826/1112384110. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion's mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 367. The latest chapter isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. This was the first time Gu Jiao had heard of such a thing. Most of the rumors she heard about the late emperor and her grandaunt came from consort Rui Wang, But most of what Rui Wang mentioned was related to Consort Jing. For example, Consort Jing's heart belonged to someone, and she was willing to move into the nunnery. Consort Rui Wang's words might not be the truth. At the very least, her willingness to move into the nunnery was a lie. Eunuch Qin had already refuted the rumors for Gu Jiao. It was Empress Dowager Zhuang who sent her to the nunnery with a decree. Gu Jiao once thought that the reason why Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't directly order Consort Jing's death was because of the emperor. If her grandaunt gave the decree openly, the emperor wouldn't hesitate to go against her and issue an imperial edict to stop her. If her grandaunt did it secretly, the emperor would send the Shadow Dragon Guards to stop her. However, if what Gu Chengfeng said was true and Consort Jing burned an imperial edict ordering her death for her grandaunt, then her grandaunt would owe her a life-saving grace. However, Gu Jiao didn't think this was likely. Consort Jing had already drugged her grandaunt and the emperor. Why would she be so kind as to burn an imperial edict for her grandaunt? Of course, there was another possibility. The imperial edict ordering her grandaunt to be buried with her hadn't been burned by Consort Jing, but had been used as leverage against her. Before getting that imperial edict, her grandaunt couldn't let Consort Jing die. Otherwise, no one could be sure that Consort Jing didn't have a backup plan. Once she died, the imperial edict would be issued in broad daylight. However, Gu Jiao quickly eliminated this possibility. Consort Jing had schemed to deal with her grandaunt. With this imperial edict, she could directly send her grandaunt to the 18th level of hell. Why would she leave it as leverage? Wasn't this an unnecessary move? Assuming that Gu Chengfeng was telling the truth and that old concubine Jing had risked her life to steal the imperial edict and burn it, who had seen the contents of the edict? How could they prove that the edict was for her grandaunt to be buried with her, and not something else? Wasn't it all based on her words? As long as it did not involve relationships and love, Gu Jiao's brain worked quickly. Don't be fooled by the fact that she had thought so much. In fact, it had only taken a moment. Gu Chengfeng had already taken the imperial edict out of the box. He placed the box on the crook of his arm and opened the imperial edict with both hands. However, old concubine Jing suddenly returned the moment he opened the imperial edict. She had sensed something while she was still in the corridor. Unlike the Dragon Shadow Guard, she was extremely sensitive to the sound of conversation. "Who goes there?" she snapped. Gu Chengfeng's hand trembled, and the box in his arm fell to the ground with a clatter. "Catch him!" At Grand Concubine Jing's command, the Dragon Shadow Guards burst through the door and grabbed at Gu Chengfeng and Gu Jiao with their bare hands. "Let's go!" Gu Chengfeng grabbed Gu Jiao with one hand and stuffed the imperial edict into his bosom with the other. Seeing that the Dragon Shadow Guard was about to grab the two of them, Gu Jiao quickly took out a black gunpowder from her pouch and threw it at him. The Dragon Shadow Guard had suffered from gunpowder before and knew that it was a hidden weapon that couldn't be taken head-on. He quickly dodged to the side, and the gunpowder smashed onto the table behind him, causing it to explode. Taking advantage of this, Gu Chengfeng grabbed Gu Jiao and rushed out of the nunnery. The two of them had both put on masks and changed their clothes, so Grand Concubine Jing couldn't recognize them. Grand Concubine Jing entered the room and saw that the imperial edict was gone. Her expression changed drastically as she said to the Dragon Shadow Guard, "Take the imperial edict back." The Dragon Shadow Guard received the order and chased in the direction that Gu Jiao and Gu Chengfeng had left. The Dragon Shadow Guard was invincible in both martial arts and Qinggong, so he quickly caught up to the two. When Gu Chengfeng took the imperial edict, the Dragon Shadow Guard saw it. He knew that the imperial edict was on Gu Chengfeng's body, so he grabbed Gu Chengfeng's shoulder without another word. That hand that was like an eagle's claw dug into Gu Chengfeng's flesh. Gu Chengfeng's face was twisted in pain. He did not resist immediately. Instead, he used all his strength to push Gu Jiao away. The moment he pushed her away, he stuffed the imperial edict into Gu Jiao's sleeve. He was probably the only one who could do this under the Dragon Shadow Guard's nose. The Dragon Shadow Guard didn't notice that the imperial edict had been moved. He reached out with his other hand towards Gu Chengfeng's chest. He was a death warrior, so he didn't know how to control his strength. This time, he was probably going to dig open Gu Chengfeng's chest. Gu Jiao looked back at the two of them and suddenly took out the imperial edict. The imperial edict is here. The dragon shadow guard's gaze swooped towards Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao threw the imperial edict in the other direction of the palace. The dragon shadow guard was ordered to take back the imperial edict, so he chased after it. Gu Qingfeng held his shoulder and knelt on the ground, exhausted. Gu Jiao squatted down. Can you still walk? Gu Qingfeng shook his head with a pale face. I can't use my qinggong. The dragon shadow guard was too scary. He had only grabbed him casually, but he couldn't use his martial arts in an instant. Hurry up and leave. He endured the pain and weakness all over his body. The imperial edict was too important. It was only in a state of panic that concubine Jing only cared about grabbing the edict. Once she got the edict, she would think of silencing the two of them. Gu Jiao grabbed him. Come with me. The dragon shadow guard found the imperial edict and handed it to Grand Concubine Jing. Grand Concubine Jing took the imperial edict with a cold expression. Grand Concubine. Granny Kai hurried over and looked at the imperial edict in her hand. Her expression changed. Someone came to steal the imperial edict? Who is it? How did they know about this imperial edict? Grand Concubine Jing looked in the direction of the palace walls without saying anything. Renshou Palace. Eunuch Qin was feeding his pond of tortoises when two figures suddenly fell from the sky and landed on his tortoises. Oh my tortoises! Eunuch Qin was so shocked that the leaves in his hand flew out. He was about to call for the palace experts when he saw one of the small figures take off her mask. He stared. Miss Gu. At that moment, Gu Qingfeng's mask fell off as well, revealing a pale, handsome face. Eunuch Qin was shocked again. Second young master Gu? His Majesty has arrived. Gu Jiao so fast. Empress Dowager Zhuang wasn't here. She had gone to the side hall of the throne room to discuss matters with the ministers. Eunuch Qin brought Gu Jiao and Gu Qingfeng into Empress Dowager Zhuang's bedchamber. Eunuch Qin then went to Renshou Palace and kowtowed to the emperor. Greetings, Your Majesty. Granny Kai was beside the emperor. Eunuch Qin glanced at Granny Kai calmly and smiled. Why is His Majesty here? The Empress Dowager is discussing matters with the ministers in the throne room. The emperor said. Granny Kai said that an assassin tried to assassinate Mother Jing and was injured by the experts around her. The assassin escaped into Renshou Palace. Something like that happened? Eunuch Qin was shocked. Was the old imperial concubine injured? Granny Kai said politely. The old imperial concubine was a bit frightened, but it's nothing serious. The old imperial concubine was worried that the assassin would harm the Empress Dowager, so she quickly reported it to His Majesty. I didn't see any assassin. Eunuch Qin turned to look at the palace servants. Did you see the assassin? They all shook their heads. No. Eunuch Qin smiled. Your Majesty, Granny Kai must have seen wrongly. This is Renshou Palace, where experts are as common as the clouds. Which assassin would be so reckless as to charge in? Granny Kai said worriedly. The assassin's martial arts are very high. He was able to escape from the dragon shadow guards. Eunuch Qin, you should be careful. In the past, the emperor would not care about the life or death of Empress Dowager Zhuang. However, he was now in an alliance with Empress Dowager Zhuang. They had a common enemy. That person was hiding in the dark, holding his neck to deal with the people he cared about. He could not let the other party succeed. Get out of the way, the emperor said coldly. Eunuch Qin did not move. He bowed and said, Your Majesty, the Empress Dowager is not in Renshou Palace. If the assassin really wanted to assassinate her, he should have gone to the throne room. Granny Kai's previous worried and modest expression changed. She frowned and said, Perhaps the assassin was lying in ambush here, waiting for the Empress Dowager to come back. Eunuch Qin, you are blocking His Majesty's search. Could it be? You are in cahoots with the assassin? Who gave you the courage to shout in front of Aijia's door? Empress Dowager Zhuang's phoenix sedan appeared behind everyone, accompanied by a voice that was not angry but powerful. Everyone turned around and bowed in unison to Empress Dowager Zhuang on the carriage. The emperor looked at the phoenix carriage in the distance with an uneasy expression. The phoenix carriage stopped in front of the group. After it landed, Eunuch Qin walked forward and gave his wrist to Empress Dowager Zhuang. Empress Dowager Zhuang held his wrist and slowly walked out. She did not need to speak loudly or speak harshly. Just a faint look was enough to intimidate everyone. Granny Kai, who had been relying on the emperor's support, suddenly did not dare to say anything. Empress Dowager Zhuang strolled in front of her. Speak. Why are you not speaking? Weren't you quite eloquent when Ijia was not here? How come you became a gourd with a sawed-off mouth when Ijia came? Granny Kai lowered her head in grievance and stood next to the emperor. In the end, she was concubine Jing's trusted servant. The emperor could not bear to see her suffer an injustice, so he said, "What wrong did Granny Kai do? With the assassin, it is natural to search. However, this old servant is obstructing us in every possible way. It is indeed suspicious." Eunuch Qin reported to Empress Dowager Zhuang, "Miss Gu is resting inside. This servant was worried that so many people would disturb Miss Gu, so I stopped them. Moreover, this servant did not discover any assassins. If Empress Dowager does not believe me, you can ask the palace experts in Renshou Palace. They also did not." Before Eunuch Qin could finish, the sound of weapons clashing came from the bedchamber. Everyone's hearts trembled. Then Gu Jiao's cold shout rang out. "You still want to escape?" "Ah, Miss Gu." Eunuch Qin's expression changed greatly. He called out to the palace experts, "Quick! Go take a look." 4 palace experts turned and ran towards the bedchamber. However, before they could move out, a miserable cry came from the end. Ah! It was a man's voice. Eunuch Wei spread his arms and blocked the emperor. "Assassin! Assassin! Protect the emperor!" Just as the experts from Pure Flower's palace were about to move out, Gu Jiao walked out with a black-clothed assassin whose head and face were covered in dirt. She threw the assassin to the ground and said indifferently, "Assassin here." Gu Jiao had already changed back into her own clothes. Her hair was disheveled, as if she had just woken up from her bed and did not have time to comb her hair. Mama Kai looked at the assassin in a daze. Her Highness the Imperial Concubine had guessed correctly? The assassin was from Renshou Palace? But wasn't there 2? Mama Kai looked suspiciously at Gu Jiao. "Miss Gu, there were 2 assassins in total." "2? I only caught 1. Gu Jiao crossed her arms and said without a change in expression. The assassin's face was covered in dirt, and his original appearance couldn't be seen clearly. However, there was blood at the corner of his mouth. He was probably heavily injured and did not have the strength to fight back. The emperor looked at him coldly. "Who sent you? If you tell us the mastermind behind this, we will spare your life. I am the emperor, and I never go back on my words." A trace of hesitation flashed across the assassin's face. His frightened eyes swept over the people outside Renshou Palace, and finally fell on Mama Kai's face. An ominous premonition suddenly rose from the bottom of Mama Kai's heart. The assassin looked at Mama Kai in horror and said, It's Jing. Shut up." Mama Kai strode forward. She seemed to have guessed what the assassin was going to say. She wanted to stop him, but it was too late. The assassin half lay on the ground and supported his body with his elbow. He gritted his teeth and said, "It's Imperial Concubine Jing. Imperial Concubine Jing asked me to assassinate the Empress Dowager." Mama Kai was completely dumbfounded. How could this be? How could the Imperial Concubine be the one to catch the assassin? She panicked and said, "You are slandering me. When did Imperial Concubine Jing ask you to assassinate the Empress Dowager? If it was really Imperial Concubine Jing who asked you to come, why did she ask me to search you?" The assassin coughed up blood and sneered. "How would I know? Maybe Imperial Concubine Jing suddenly found out that I knew her secret." Before the assassin could finish his words, Mama Kai suddenly rushed over and stabbed the assassin in the heart. You killed silenced." After saying this, the assassin's eyes rolled back and his body tilted to one side, falling into a pool of blood. Mama Kai was so shocked that she took a few steps back and fell straight to the ground. I didn't. It wasn't me. I didn't kill anyone." She really didn't want to kill anyone. She didn't rush over on her own. Her knees seemed to have been hit by something and she fell toward the assassin. Before she could react, a knife appeared in her hand. Then the knife was stabbed into the assassin's heart. Gu Jiao squatted down and used her fingertips to check the assassin's neck. She stood up and said, "He's not breathing." Empress Dowager Zhuang frowned and said, "Hurry up and get rid of him. Wipe the door clean for me. Don't leave a single drop of blood. I hate the smell of blood." "Yes, yes, yes." Eunuch Qin hurriedly asked the eunuchs of Renshou Palace to take the assassin's body away, and asked the palace maids to clean up the scene. Mama Kai was confused by this series of events. She had never seen such a shameless operation. Her mind was in a mess and she couldn't think at all. She could only defend herself. "Your Majesty, I didn't kill anyone. Believe me, that knife isn't mine." Gu Jiao said, "You saw it. If it's not yours, then whose is it?" Eunuch Wei said, "Yes. If it's not yours, then whose is it? I also saw it." Granny Kai glared at him coldly. "Wei, have you forgotten which side you are on again?" Eunuch Wei shrunk his neck and turned around to slap his own mouth. "Stupid mouth again. Stupid mouth again." Mama Kai fell to her knees. "Your Majesty, if you don't believe me, you should believe Imperial Concubine Jing. How could she frame the Empress Dowager? Imperial Concubine Jing is kind-hearted. She wouldn't do such a thing." A complicated feeling flashed through the Emperor's heart. He and Imperial Concubine Jing grew up together, so he knew very well what kind of person she was. She couldn't even bear to kill an ant and always repaid evil with good. Even when Empress Dowager Zhuang drove her out of the palace, she never complained about the latter in front of him. Not only that, but she also tried to persuade him to reconcile with Empress Dowager Zhuang. How could she do such a terrible thing? Moreover, no one would send an assassin to do an assassination, and then catch the assassin with great fanfare. According to the assassin, he knew Imperial Concubine Jing's secret, and Imperial Concubine Jing only realized it after she sent him out. That was even more ridiculous. How could someone as innocent as Imperial Concubine Jing have a secret? No, she did have a secret. A secret with Gu Chao. The Emperor suddenly became irritated. He was furious when he thought about how Gu Chao almost became his father. He didn't know if it was because he was angry, but he suddenly found Mama Kai an eyesore. "Your Majesty." Mama Kai looked at the Emperor nervously. The Emperor frowned. "Detain Mama Kai and interrogate her." He used the words detain and interrogate with great distrust. One had to know that the Emperor used to listen to Imperial Concubine Jing's every word without any doubt. He even regarded Imperial Concubine Jing's confidant as his own. But now he was treating Mama Kai as a suspect. Eunuch Wei was shocked. "Your Majesty?" The Emperor didn't pay attention to anyone else. He flicked his sleeves and left irritably. Empress Dowager Zhuang and Gu Jiao returned to the bedchamber. In the backyard of the sleeping chamber, the corpse that was supposed to be disposed of sat up with a swoosh. He wiped the mud off his face and removed the blood bag in his arms. He raised his eyebrows and smiled. "My acting skills are not bad, right?" Gu Jiao said faintly. "Oh, not as good as me." Gu Qingfeng. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_8964286/111211400. HTML Genius memorized the website's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Biku Pavilion's mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 368. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are novels with connotations that can't be found online here. Who is this silly boy? Empress Dowager Zhuang asked casually. Gu Qingfeng then realized that Empress Dowager Zhuang had also come over and was standing behind Gu Jiao. Gu Qingfeng and Empress Dowager Zhuang had met twice. One time was in by Shui Alley, and the other time was when he and Gu Jiao were chased by Tang Ming to the vicinity of the palace. Empress Dowager Zhuang killed them as assassins, which made Tang Ming feel relieved. The inspiration to pretend to be assassins and get killed came from Empress Dowager Zhuang. At that time, Gu Qingfeng was wearing a mask, so Empress Dowager Zhuang did not recognize him as Gu Jiao's friend. Gu Qingfeng's face was covered in dirt, so Empress Dowager Zhuang did not recognize him. But in the next second, Empress Dowager Zhuang guessed something. Oh, the one who went to the marshal's mansion. Were her eyes so sharp? She could guess that? She had changed her voice when she spoke. If Empress Dowager Zhuang did not have this ability, then she had been in the imperial court and the harem for so many years in vain. She glanced at Gu Qingfeng indifferently. What's your relationship with Jiao Jiao? Why did it feel like this was a fatal question? Gu Qingfeng looked at Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao hugged the child with both hands and looked on with folded arms. Ah, this girl, she threw him away after using him. She was too heartless. Empress Dowager. He stood up and bowed. Gu Qingfeng greets the Empress Dowager. Oh, Jiao Jiao's brother was not a wildflower or wild grass. He would not disturb her holding her little great-grandson. Empress Dowager Zhuang then left without asking why Gu Qingfeng knew martial arts or why he entered the palace. Gu Qingfeng was a little confused. The Empress Dowager's temperament is quite unique. Eunuch Qin's tortoise was the one that really stunned the two of them. Fortunately, the tortoise's shell was tough, so it wasn't a big deal. It was just a little frightened, so it hid in its shell for the whole afternoon. Gu Jiao treated the injury on Gu Qingfeng's shoulder and asked him for 1,000 taels of silver, calling it a consultation fee. Gu Qingfeng, who hadn't even warmed up the 1,000 taels banknotes. Gu Qingfeng looked at her with a headache. Speaking of which, you would rather give up the imperial edict to save me from the hands of the dragon Shadow Guard. Could it be that you coveted this 1,000 taels of silver? After all, if he died, his body would definitely be disposed of and she would not be able to get the banknotes. Gu Jiao had a look of disbelief on her face. Gu Qingfeng understood. He suddenly felt a little touched. This girl actually had some conscience. She didn't only know how to exploit him. Gu Jiao analyzed seriously. If you die, I'll lose 1,000 taels. But if you're alive, I'll earn a lot of 1,000 taels. As for the imperial edict, aren't you the #1 thief? I'll steal it back next time. Gu Qingfeng. So why should he be touched? The two ate lunch at Empress Dowager Zhuang's Renshou Palace. In the end, Gu Qingfeng couldn't treat Empress Dowager Zhuang as an ordinary great-aunt. He ate the meal very cautiously. On the other hand, Gu Jiao kept puffing and stuffing her cheeks, reminding him of the little fat squirrel he once caught in the back mountain. In the nunnery, Grand Concubine Jing was chanting while knocking on a wooden fish while waiting quietly. However, she didn't receive the news that Granny Kai had caught the assassin. Instead, she received the bad news that Granny Kai had been detained and interrogated by the emperor. Grand Concubine. The little nun who delivered the news knelt behind her and looked at her uneasily. What should we do? Granny Kai was taken away. Why did His Majesty take her away? Isn't Granny Kai a member of our nunnery? Didn't His Majesty? The little nun spoke a string of grievances in one breath. By the end of it, she even shed tears. The palace had never been able to hide anything. Moreover, a small matter could be described with great detail. There was no need for Renshou Palace to spread anything. Granny Kai's capture was enough to make people wonder if the relationship between Grand Concubine Jing and the emperor had truly become tense. Grand Concubine, let's go plead with His Majesty and ask for Granny Kai's release. Granny Kai is old. She can't endure such hardships. The little nun hadn't been in the palace for long, but she'd heard a lot about the torture that was worse than death. After being taken away for interrogation, at least a layer of her skin would be peeled off regardless of whether she got anything out of the interrogation. She was worried. She was also afraid. She was afraid that this huge building would collapse and crush her to death. Night fell, and the nunnery was silent. The little nun's sobs gradually melted into the night. Grand Concubine Jing didn't do anything. She didn't even send anyone to inquire about Granny Kai. She just sat quietly in the temple with her palms together, as if she was praying to Buddha sincerely, but also as if she was just sitting there. The little nun finally couldn't take it anymore. She'd only heard about the cruelty of the palace, but had never personally experienced it. She ran to Pure Flower's palace while choking with sobs. "Let me see His Majesty. Grand Concubine hasn't eaten or drank for an entire day. If this goes on, she'll get sick." She cried very loudly. This was a great taboo in the palace. She didn't know how lucky she was that she hadn't been dragged away and punished by the palace rules. What's the commotion outside? The emperor put down the booklet in his hand and pinched his forehead. Eunuch Wei said in a low voice, "It's the Grand Concubine's little nun." She said, "The Grand Concubine hasn't eaten for an entire day." The emperor's brows furrowed. Eunuch Wei observed his expression and said, "Your Majesty, do you want this servant to go take a look?" The emperor opened his mouth. He actually hesitated. For a moment he wanted to nod. But then he was frightened by his own thoughts. In the past, whenever he heard news about concubine Mother Jing, he would immediately put aside his official duties and go visit her. Why was it that he wasn't in such a hurry when she hadn't eaten or drank for an entire day? He shouldn't be like this. He closed his eyes and said, "We will make a trip to the nunnery." Eunuch Wei replied, "Understood." The emperor didn't take the palanquin and walked over with Eunuch Wei. Concubine Jing liked tranquility, so the nunnery was located in a very remote area. Moreover, the construction had been rushed through the night, so the nunnery itself wasn't very big. Now that it was swallowed up by the night, it seemed even more insignificant and helpless. The little nun was pleasantly surprised to see the emperor. "Your Majesty." The emperor didn't look at her, and only raised his hand indifferently. The little nun was immediately intimidated by the might of a true dragon. The lights in the hall were lit, and a lonely figure jumped on the paper window. The emperor walked over. Concubine Jing was sitting on the ground alone in the cold hall. She tried to straighten her back, but it seemed that she couldn't withstand the passing of time. Her body was showing a trace of dispiritedness in her old age. The emperor suddenly felt a bit sour in his heart. "Mother." Concubine Jing didn't turn around. She said calmly, "Your Majesty, if there's nothing else, please go back." The emperor heard her emotionless voice and felt even more sour in his heart. "Mother, are you blaming me?" Concubine Jing laughed self-deprecatingly. "Blaming you for what? Should I blame you for kidnapping Kai Momo because of a disagreement? Or should I blame you for having nightmares and thinking that I was a scourge, and that the Empress Dowager was your true mother? Or should I blame you for hurriedly sending me out of Pure Flower's palace, even though you clearly brought me back from outside the palace? Your Majesty, what am I? How many mothers in this world would wish for their own son to call them mother?" She turned around as she spoke. There were no tears in her eyes, only endless sorrow. The emperor felt his heart ache when he saw her like this. How could he suspect his own mother? How could she have secrets of her own? How could she have sent assassins to assassinate the Empress Dowager? Ningen had married far away, and she had been forced to go to the nunnery. Her only son couldn't even be at her side. How had she spent all these years alone? Had he forgotten everything? He walked forward and sat down in front of her, holding her hand. "Hong Er will never do it again. In Hong Er's heart, mother will always be my only mother." Concubine Jing's fingers trembled and her eyes turned red. The emperor held her hand tightly in guilt. "Mother, you haven't eaten yet, right? Hong Er will eat with you." Concubine Jing asked firmly, "Then your Majesty won't suspect me from now on?" "We." The emperor hesitated for a moment. "We won't do it again." Concubine Jing lowered her eyes. So Concubine Jing has hidden her secrets so deeply. Gu Qingfeng couldn't help but sigh to Gu Jiao on the carriage back. Gu Jiao would not tell him these things. Gu Jiao was a woman of few words. It was Gu Qingfeng who helped Eunuch Qin feed the tortoise. Eunuch Qin had already told him about their revolutionary friendship. What shocked Gu Qingfeng the most was that Concubine Jing could even bear to kill the emperor. He was her adopted son, so how could she bear to feed him so many strange drugs? Wasn't she afraid of feeding him until he turned stupid? A woman's heart is the most poisonous. His words had a double meaning, and he wanted to take the opportunity to mock Gu Jiao. However, Gu Jiao didn't react at all. Gu Qingfeng felt as if he had punched cotton. As the carriage swayed, Gu Qingfeng suddenly thought of something and smiled mischievously. You switched the black and white medicine just now, didn't you? Won't it backfire the next time she tries to drug the emperor? It was a dark and windy night, and the monastery was secluded. Only the sound of stir-frying could be heard from the small kitchen. The emperor went to another meditation room to wait. Concubine Jing pushed open the door to her room and slowly walked in. She then waved her sleeve and closed the door with her internal energy. She opened the wardrobe and took out the black and white medicine from the small box. She pulled out the cork of the white medicine bottle and poured out a dark brown pill, which she wrapped in a white handkerchief. She was about to leave when she suddenly paused. Her gaze fell on the small box, where the imperial edict had been placed, and then the two bottles. She suddenly put the pill back into the white bottle and poured out a pill from the black bottle. She took the medicine from the black bottle and went to the meditation room next door. The vegetarian dishes were all served. The emperor sat with her on the cushion, and he personally served her the dishes. Your Majesty, eat by yourself, she said. There's no emperor or concubine here. There's only Hong-er and mother. The emperor picked up a piece of bamboo shoot for the concubine. I remember that mother likes to eat bamboo shoots. It's not the season now, so there's only pickled bamboo shoots. When the winter shoots come out, I'll have someone dig up a big basket. Concubine Jing said, How can I eat so much? Your Majesty, this is the mushroom soup made by the concubine herself. The little nun happily presented a bowl of soup. The emperor said, Mother, you don't have to work so hard anymore. Concubine Jing said, It's rare for you to come here. The emperor said solemnly, I'll come here every day. Every day. Perhaps it was because these words touched the concubine's heart, but her expression was no longer as cold. She sighed, picked up the spoon, and scooped a bowl of mushroom soup for the emperor. You can all leave, she said. Yes. The little nun and the palace servants gradually retreated. You can leave as well, the emperor said to Eunuch Wei. Eunuch Wei. Yes. Only the two of them were left in the room, which was filled with the fragrance of sandalwood. The so-called white medicine and black medicine weren't forced to be fed to him. She only needed him to see her when the medicine took effect and remember her deeply. That was enough. Drink it while it's hot. She handed the bowl to the emperor. The emperor took a sip and said with a smile, Mother's cooking is as good as ever. As long as you like it. Your Majesty, the Empress Dowager has summoned you for a meeting. Eunuch Wei's voice suddenly came from outside. Concubine Jing looked at him with a flicker in her eyes. The emperor's heart ached at her uneasy and reluctant gaze. He said, I'm having my meal. We'll discuss it another day. Yes, Eunuch Wei said helplessly. The emperor picked up the spoon and drank the mushroom soup that his lady mother had personally made for him mouthful by mouthful. After finishing the soup, the emperor put down the bowl and held his forehead. Mother, I'm feeling a bit dizzy. Concubine Jing looked at him gently. It's all right. Just sleep for a while. You'll be fine when you wake up. The emperor lay on the table and looked at Concubine Jing in a daze. Her smile was in front of him. Her voice was in his ears, and her scent was at the tip of his nose. All of this was deeply imprinted in his mind. He wanted to remember this person, but he didn't know why. He just wanted to remember her deeply. In the carriage, Gu Jiao leaned lazily against the wall. I did change the black medicine and the white medicine, but I changed them back. Gu Qingfeng was shocked. What did you say? You changed them back? That means, the white bottle is still filled with white medicine, and the black bottle is still filled with black medicine? Gu Jiao nodded. That's right. Gu Qingfeng was stunned. Why did you do that? Gu Jiao said faintly, because my godfather said that there are always people in this world who like to be too smart for their own good. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online can be found here. https://www.zhhbqg com/89642_896422826/111210271. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Biku Pavilion's mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 369. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. Gu Jiao and Gu Chengfeng parted ways at Zhuke Avenue. Gu Chengfeng took Chang, an avenue to Qinghe Academy, while Gu Jiao went to Hanlin Academy. Hanlin Academy was busy with work recently. Xiao Lulang always got off work late, so Gu Jiao went to bring him some food. Gu Jiao brought a few boxes of snacks from the Imperial Kitchen from Renshou Palace. She left a few boxes for Yao Shi and little Jing Kong, while the other box was for Xiao Lulang. She took the snacks and went near Hanlin Academy. Xiao Lulang happened to come out of Hanlin Academy. Hanlin Academy was the place where the scholars studied. Although it belonged to Hanlin Academy, it was not inside Hanlin Academy. It was on the same street as Hanlin Academy. Gu Jiao saw the handsome young man from afar. It was not appropriate to call him a young man. Other than his tender face, the aura he exuded was very calm. However, the men of Zhao country had to be called young man before they reached the age of 20. The twilight shone on his delicate face, making it seem even gentler. Gu Jiao crossed her arms and leaned against the wall at the entrance of the alley. She looked at him, and her lips unconsciously curved into a beautiful arc. Xiao Xiuzhua. A scholar ran out of Hanlin Academy. He held a book in his hand. Judging from the color, it seemed that he had read it countless times. Xiao Lulang stopped and turned to look at him. "What's the matter, Master Zhou?" The scholar who was called Master Zhou scratched his head embarrassedly. "Xiao Xiuzhua remembers me," Xiao Lulang said. "During the court examination, you sat in front of me. I heard Du Ruhan call you." Master Zhou believed that Xiao Lulang remembered him. He was flattered. He widened his eyes for a long time before he reacted. I. He was so excited that he stammered. Perhaps in the eyes of many people, Xiao Lulang was a top scholar, who relied on underhanded means to get to the top. However, after listening to Xiao Liulang's lectures so many times, he deeply felt the depth of Xiao Liulang's knowledge. This new top scholar Xiao Lulang was fully deserving of the title. Brother Du and I are friends. No. He was worried that Xiao Lulang would think that he was using his relationship with Du Ruhan to get close to Xiao Lulang. The more he spoke, the more nervous he became. Xiao Lulang looked at the book in his hand and asked, "Are there any questions you don't understand?" While Attendant Yang was recuperating, Xiao Lulang and Junwang took his place to give a few lessons to the scholars of the Hanlin Academy. After Attendant Yang returned, they no longer went to the Hanlin Academy. Today, Minister Deng had something to do at the last minute, and had asked him to teach a lesson on the laws of the current dynasty. The book in young Master Zhou's hand was the law of the Zhao country that he learned in class. Young Master Zhou smiled embarrassedly. "I understand everything that Xiao Xiuzhua taught. Really, you taught it very well. It's not boring at all. I don't like laws. In the past, I would always be absent-minded in law classes, so I fell behind a lot." He wasn't flattering Xiao Lulang. He really understood Xiao Liulang's class. He never knew that law classes could be taught like this. Xiao Lulang didn't recite the laws for them from the beginning. Instead, he first talked about a murder case of the 5 viscera of the previous dynasty. In an instant, he attracted the attention of all the students, including himself. The ingenuity of this class was that all the students forgot that they were in a class. They felt that they were really solving a shocking unsolved case. They were guessing the murderer, until they almost got into a fight. Xiao Lulang said that if it was in the current dynasty, then the murderer of this case wouldn't be convicted. They were confused. Killing 5 people in a row. How could such a cruel murderer not be convicted? How could this be? They didn't believe it and refuted Xiao Liulang's words. They thought that Xiao Lulang was talking nonsense. Xiao Lulang didn't get angry. He just looked at everyone calmly and said, "What evidence do you have to prove that I'm talking nonsense?" "A life for a life," a student said. Xiao Lulang said calmly, "A life for a life is a principle. It's not the law of Zhao country. Executioners kill people, bandits kill people, self-defense kill people, negligent homicide, intentional homicide. Every situation is different and can't be generalized." The class ended here. Everyone wanted to continue. It wasn't that they liked Xiao Lulang, but they felt that they didn't win the argument. If they could do it again, they would be able to perform better. They suffered because they didn't know the law. In the past, everyone left after class, but today, young Master Zhou smiled and said, everyone stayed in the classroom to discuss, saying that what Xiao Xiuzhua said was wrong. Then they all went to look for evidence. In order to overthrow Xiao Lulang, the scholars went all out. I've never seen everyone so serious. Young Master Zhou said with a smile. Xiao Liulang's expression was very calm. He looked at young Master Zhou and said, "You came here just to tell me this?" "Ah. No. I'm..." Young Master Zhou scratched his head. His face was red, but he couldn't say anything. "Alright, Suer, let me say it." A tall and sturdy man with strong facial features walked over from the other side of the street. "Uncle." Young Master Zhou turned and bowed to him like a junior. Xiao Lulang looked at him in surprise. "Minister Xing?" The man was none other than Minister Xing Yun. Minister Xing smiled and said, "Xiao Xiuzhua, how have you been?" Xiao Lulang cupped his hands and bowed. Xiao Lulang had helped the Ministry of Justice solve a murder case. Minister Xing appreciated Xiao Lulang. He smiled and said, "I didn't expect you to be Suer's teacher. I see that you're even younger than Suer. You're young and promising." "Minister Xing, you're too kind," Xiao Lulang said politely. "Go to the carriage and wait for me," Minister Xing said to Zhou Su. Zhou Su was thin-skinned, so he felt like he was being pardoned. He bowed to Xiao Lulang and quickly ran to the carriage. Minister Xing smiled and said, "I asked Suer to find you for 2 reasons. First, I wonder if you're interested in joining the Ministry of Justice? You have the talent to solve cases, and you have great ambition. You're upright. The Ministry of Justice lacks talents like you. Moreover, the Ministry of Justice isn't the Zhuang family's territory. Grand Tutor Zhuang's hands can't reach here." To be able to say this, it was clear that Minister Xing had done his homework. At the very least, he had investigated Xiao Liulang's experience in the Hanlin Academy. Minister Xing smiled and said, "You don't have to rush to answer me. Take your time to think about it. If you have any ideas, you can come to the Ministry of Justice at any time to find me. Or let Suer tell me and I'll go see you." Up until this point, Gu Jiao was very happy. She knew that her husband was very capable. Xiao Lulang didn't comment and asked, "Then the second thing?" "The second thing." Minister Xing rubbed the bridge of his nose and smiled. "I have a daughter. She's about the same age as you. She's not married." Gu Jiao's face darkened. Xiao Lulang understood Minister Xing's meaning. He cupped his hands and said politely and distantly, "I'm indebted to Minister Xing's love, but I already have a wife." Already have a wife. Why did these words sound so nice coming from his mouth? Gu Jiao shook her head. Minister Xing's face was full of shock. He said embarrassedly, I was rude. Xiao Xiuzhua, don't take my words to heart." The two talked for a while more before Minister Xing left in the carriage. He didn't agree, did he? In the carriage, Zhou Su asked his uncle. Minister Xing shook his head. He refused so straightforwardly. Zhou Su said without surprise, "I knew it. Lord Xiao is a gentleman. On the day he passed the imperial examination, he didn't even go to the brothel to drink. I heard that he went back to accompany his wife. His wife was born in the countryside. Her appearance is average, but he never disdained her. Uncle, you can't take this kind of person home as a son-in-law." Minister Xing rubbed his hands and sighed regretfully. Minister Xing had just left when Xiao Lulang saw Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao looked at him in a good mood. Her pair of clear eyes curved into 2 small crescent moons. Xiao Lulang was stunned. He didn't expect her to come, and he didn't expect to see her smile. She also smiled normally. She smiled obediently in front of him, laughed heartily when she was amused by others, and smiled gently when she played with little Jingkong. But none of them were as sweet and affectionate as the one in front of him. She didn't seem to know. Her eyes were as bright as fire. When she looked at him, there was light in her eyes. The dim corners of Xiao Liulang's heart seemed to suddenly welcome a light. And Gu Jiao tilted her head, as if asking him why he didn't leave. Xiao Liulang felt that he was probably sick. She looked so silly, but he actually felt that she was quite cute. He wanted to grab her. He wanted to hug her. He wanted to rub her. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_896428226/1111832219. HTML Genius remembered the website address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikuga mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 370. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel will be updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels will be read for free. There are all kinds of novels that can't be found online. Xiao Liulang didn't work overtime tonight, so the two went back to Qingshui Alley together. As soon as they arrived at the door, a small figure rushed out and pounced on Gu Jiao. He hugged Gu Jiao's leg and called out in a small voice with a hint of grievance, "Jiao Jiao." It was little Jingkong. He left Jiao Jiao for 2 days and 2 nights. He missed Jiao Jiao so much that his heart ached when he thought about it. Gu Jiao picked up the little guy on her leg and asked, "Did Grandaunt ask you to come back?" Little Jingkong said, "I asked to come back." Empress Dowager Zhuang couldn't stand this little loudspeaker anymore. Without Gu Jiao by his side, he was really good at blabbering. Even Eunuch Qin's little bastard became autistic because of his blabbering. It was important to have a little great-grandchild, but it was more important to live until the day the little great-grandchild was born. So when he asked to leave the palace again, Empress Dowager Zhuang hurriedly asked Eunuch Qin to pack him up and send him back. Little Jingkong hugged Gu Jiao's neck and rested his head on her shoulder. "Jiao Jiao, I missed you so much. Did you miss me even a little bit?" Gu Jiao was amused by him and nodded. "Yes, I missed you." "I knew it." The little guy was so proud that his little body twisted in Gu Jiao's arms. Xiao Liulang looked at the little guy who was acting spoiled with Gu Jiao unscrupulously. His handsome face gradually darkened. "Jiao Jiao, there's a lantern festival tonight." Little Jingkong didn't notice his bad brother-in-law's sour face. He hugged Jiao Jiao's neck and sighed. "I'm so old, but I haven't seen a lantern festival yet." The little fellow had learned how to beat around the bush. Gu Jiao and Xiao Liulang didn't have anything to do tonight. Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshan happened to be at home as well. Thus after dinner, the young couple went out with their 3 younger brothers and 2 secret guards. The lantern festival was held on Chang'an Avenue. Other than the end of the street and the end of the street, the stalls in the middle of the street were filled with dazzling lanterns. Some of these lanterns were for sale directly, some were for reward, and some were for making friends with lanterns and gathering to recite poems. Gu Jiao only had one thought in her mind when she glanced over. So many people, so many people. Having been in the capital for so long, this was the first time Gu Jiao was so shocked by the bustling city. As far as the eye could see, there was a surging tide of people, overflowing with colorful lights and waning lights. Aya, I can't see anything. Little Jingkong was too small, and was completely blocked by the people around him. He was so anxious that he jumped on the spot. Secret Guard A picked up little Jingkong and let him ride on his neck. Little Jingkong's eyes widened in surprise when he saw that the view suddenly became higher. Wow! The air above was so fresh. Secret Guard A carried little Jingkong and followed behind Gu Yan. secret guard be followed behind Gu Xiaoshan. The two of them were shadow guards, not dragon shadow guards. Their brain circuits were normal, and the two of them had very sharp judgment and extremely strong comprehensive abilities. They knew that they only needed to look after the three little men. They didn't need to worry about the son-in-law. Eldest Miss alone was enough to protect the son-in-law. Jiao Jiao. Look. Lotus Lantern. Jiao Jiao. Peach Lantern. Jiao Jiao. Tiger Lantern. Little Jing Kong wanted to tell Gu Jiao when he saw a lantern. At first, he could still get a response from Gu Jiao. But somehow they were separated by the crowd. Little Jing Kong turned around and found that Jiao Jiao was gone. Jiao Jiao? Just now, there was a vendor who made lanterns on the spot beside a small stall. He didn't need to buy them with copper coins. If he guessed the riddle correctly, he would get a free one. Many people heard the news and came over. Gu Jiao and Xiao Luleng were pushed to the side by the crowd. At the moment when they were about to be separated by the crowd, they reached out their hands at the same time and grabbed each other's hands. Gu Jiao did it subconsciously, and so did Xiao Luleng. The difference was that Gu Jiao was used to being nice to Xiao Luleng. She treated him so well that she didn't hide it. Xiao Luleng, on the other hand, had been very restrained and restrained. Therefore, it was the first time for him to grab her hand without any hesitation. Fortunately, Gu Jiao wasn't that sensitive. If it were someone else, they might have asked him why he took the initiative today. Gu Jiao didn't ask. She just turned her head and looked at him. Her eyes were sparkling and the corners of her lips curved slightly. Don't worry, I will catch you. I won't lose you. Xiao Luleng felt relieved. Fortunately, she didn't think too much about it. But the next second he frowned again. Why didn't she think too much about it? Didn't she realize that he took the initiative to hold her hand? Didn't she think that things weren't that simple? He took a deep breath and looked at her. You? There's really a peach lantern. Gu Jiao looked at a big pink peach in front of her and exclaimed. After saying that, she realized that he had also spoken. She asked, "What did you say just now?" Xiao Luleng opened his mouth. Nothing. There were more and more people. The two of them walked hand in hand to the end of Chang'an Street. Xiao Luleng actually didn't like crowds. He felt that it was very noisy. There was too much sweat, and the smell of cosmetics in the air. It would make him breathless. But that didn't happen tonight. A road that was supposed to be very difficult seemed to have become less difficult to walk. After the Lantern Festival, they met up with Gu Yan and the others at the other end of Chang'an Street. Little Jing Kong was crying like a sieve. Do it again. Do it again. I want Jiao Jiao. The Lantern Festival was incomplete without Jiao Jiao. Little Jing Kong felt that he had wasted his time tonight. He was crying very sadly. However, the Lantern Festival had already ended. The streets were bleak and desolate. There were only broken lanterns on the ground that had been trampled by people. Even the streets matched his mood so well. Wah! He bawled loudly. He only stopped crying when Gu Jiao promised to take him to the Lantern Festival alone next time. His eyes were red and swollen. He said with a twitch, Then I want to sleep with Jiao Jiao tonight. Xiao Yulong's mouth twitched. Little monk, I think your sadness is fake. Your real intention is to sleep with Jiao Jiao, right? Gu Jiao agreed. However, the little guy cried too hard. He was exhausted and fell asleep on the way back. Xiao Luleng rubbed his little head, but he didn't wake up. Xiao Luleng, haha. Xiao Luleng planned to carry little Jing Kong to Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshuan's room. Then he would go to Gu Jiao's room. However, when he arrived at the central room, he heard Gu Xiaoshuan say, It's okay, brother-in-law. You don't have to squeeze with us tonight. The bed in the west room has been fixed. Xiao Luleng was stunned. It's been fixed? Who fixed it? I fixed it. I fixed it in the afternoon. Gu Xiaoshuan patted his chest and said. He was his master's direct disciple, and his carpentry skills were excellent. It was just a bed, and he could fix it back. Wait. Why did everyone's face look so pale? Was he cultivating too slowly? The moon was dark and the wind was strong. Everyone had fallen asleep. The noisy city had also fallen into silence. The sound of the wooden fish in the nunnery had also stopped. Only a few candlelight flickered on the candlesticks. Eunuch Wei stood guard outside the door. He thought that His Majesty had been eating for too long. Why did he suddenly become quiet? Suddenly, the door to the meditation room was opened. Grand Concubine Jing slowly walked out. Eunuch Wei hurriedly bowed. Grand Concubine. His Majesty has been so busy with state affairs that he fell asleep while eating. Ask Hui, and to bring a mattress and a pillow. Eunuch Wei looked inside and saw the emperor sleeping on the table. He was very worried but still went to the little nun named Hui, and to get a mattress and a pillow. The wooden floor was clean. Grand Concubine Jing laid the mattress behind the emperor, and helped him lie down with Eunuch Wei. The pillow, she said. Yes. The little nun put the pillow on the emperor's head. Grand Concubine Jing personally opened the thin blanket, and gently covered the emperor. She held the emperor's hand and murmured, "Go to sleep. When you wake up, you'll be my Honger again." Eunuch Wei looked at Grand Concubine Jing strangely. That was a taboo. She wasn't the Empress Dowager, so she didn't have the right to call the emperor by his name, let alone call him mother. However, he was more concerned about the words "when you wake up, you'll be my Honger again." Why did she say that? Wasn't he the same before he woke up? The emperor slept for a long time, and it was already dawn when he woke up. Grand Concubine Jing had been watching over him all night. She couldn't take it anymore as dawn approached and fell asleep on the table beside him. She had been holding the emperor's hand the whole time, so she was the first to wake up when the emperor moved. Although there was a thick mattress, it wasn't as comfortable as the dragon bed. The emperor's back was aching. "Eunuch Wei," he called out drowsily. He was still a little groggy. Grand Concubine Jing sat up straight and looked at him with gentle eyes. "Hung." The emperor opened his eyes and looked at her with a frown. "What did you call me?" Grand Concubine Jing was startled. She stared at the emperor without blinking. However, she found that the emperor's eyes didn't have the admiration she expected. On the contrary, there was only an iceberg-like coldness and alienation. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online can be found here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_8964286/1111182244. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bkuj mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 371. The latest chapter isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. Your Majesty, you called this servant? Eunuch Wei walked in with a basin of water. He had gone to the small kitchen in the nunnery to have someone prepare hot water for the emperor. After serving the emperor for so many years, he knew that the emperor was about to wake up. Even if he didn't wake up, he had to wake the emperor up. Otherwise, what else could he do? There was still morning court to attend. Your Majesty? Eunuch Wei entered the room and suddenly felt that the atmosphere was a bit strange. He looked at the emperor, then at Concubine Jing. Oh, was he imagining things? Why did it seem like something bad had happened between the two of them? The emperor's expression was very cold, and Concubine Jing's expression wasn't very good either. Why, Your Majesty? Eunuch Wei lowered his voice and carefully walked over with the basin of hot water. The emperor held his forehead. He was still a bit dizzy, as if someone had forcefully stuffed a ball of cotton into his head. Eunuch Wei gathered his courage and glanced at Concubine Jing, but the latter only looked at the emperor without saying anything, as if she was shocked by the emperor's appearance. Eunuch Wei thought, does His Majesty have a terrible headache? Even the imperial concubine is frightened. Eunuch Wei knelt down and placed the hot water on the floor beside him. He asked quietly, Your Majesty, do you have a headache? This servant will call for an imperial physician. The emperor put down his hand from his forehead. No need, morning court is about to begin. Eunuch Wei was startled by the emperor's unfamiliar tone. He then looked at concubine Jing without batting an eyelid. This morning was really strange. After the emperor finished washing up, he returned to Pure Flower's palace to change into his dragon robes and go to court. Granny Kai was released on the emperor's orders last night, so no one stopped her. She stumbled out of the torture chamber in Pure Flower's palace and was delighted to see the emperor. She respectfully bowed. This servant kowtows in salute to your majesty. The emperor expressionlessly walked past her. Granny Kai was stunned. Since the emperor let her go, that meant he trusted the imperial concubine. Why was he treating her so coldly? Nanny Kai hurried back to the nunnery with wounds all over her body. Concubine Jing sat quietly in her meditation room. There were 2 bottles, one black and one white, on the small table beside her. Both bottles were upside down, with pills spilling out of the openings. Aya. Why was the medicine spilled? How much did he spend to buy it? You can't buy more. Mammy Kai didn't even have time to greet her, and hurriedly put the pills back into their respective bottles. She pretended to look sideways, only to see old concubine Jing's lifeless expression. She then recalled how His Majesty had ignored her this morning. Her heart skipped a beat. Old concubine. Could it be that His Majesty found out? Concubine Jing didn't say anything. She merely clenched her fists and closed her eyes. Granny Kai knew her master too well. Her face turned even paler because of this. If you didn't find anything, then. What was it? Did the medicine lose its effect? Or was it the wrong medicine? Either way, the consequences would be terrible. That incident back then had almost caused him to fall out with Her Majesty. It hadn't been easy for him to use medicine to make him forget all the bad things about Her Majesty and reconcile with Her Majesty. If he remembered. Eunuch Wei. After court, His Majesty sat in his palanquin and suddenly spoke. Did I forget something? Ah. Eunuch Wei walked beside the palanquin as he looked at His Majesty and asked, What is your Majesty talking about? Would I be asking you if I remembered? His Majesty said grumpily. Ah. Then I don't know what you're asking about. His Majesty frowned. He massaged his forehead and then his temples, feeling that he'd forgotten something important. Why couldn't he remember it all of a sudden? Your Majesty, are you still going to the nunnery? Eunuch Wei asked. Why would I go there? His Majesty asked in return. This question stumped Eunuch Wei. Did His Majesty not know why he was going to the nunnery? His Majesty remembered that he'd gone to visit concubine Jing yesterday. He asked strangely, Isn't concubine Jing in the nunnery outside the palace? I remember that the Empress Dowager sent her out of the palace back then. Why did she come back? Eunuch Wei was so shocked that he couldn't speak. Your Majesty, did you drink alcohol last night? What's wrong? His Majesty frowned. Eunuch Wei said, Have you not sobered up yet? Did you forget that you were the one who brought Her Highness the Imperial Concubine back to the palace? His Majesty was confused. I brought her back to the palace? Eunuch Wei nodded. That's right. Esteemed Imperial Concubine Dowager fell down in the nunnery and was severely injured. After you went to visit esteemed Imperial Concubine Dowager, you were worried about her safety and brought her back to Pure Flower's palace. You even had someone build a small nunnery for esteemed Imperial Concubine Dowager in the palace, so that she could often accompany the ancient Buddha. So there was such a thing. His Majesty tried hard to recall, but his head hurt as soon as he did. There seemed to be some fragmented memories, and Eunuch Wei wasn't lying. What he didn't understand was why he'd done this. It was against the rules. Although concubine Jing was his mother. That's right, she was his mother. She was the mother who'd raised him. It was only right that he was filial to her. It was only right. The emperor's head hurt again. He suddenly felt that concubine Jing's mother wasn't that good. What about her? That's right, she'd punished him and Ning'an. In the middle of winter, he and Ning'an had been punished by concubine Jing to kneel in the snow because they'd sneaked out to pick some pomelos. But that day had been Empress Dowager Zhuang's birthday, and he and Ning'an had only gone to the cold palace to give her a bag of silver charcoal and a few pomelos. She'd punished them until Ningen had fallen ill. She punished me and Ningen, the emperor suddenly said. Eunuch Wei was stunned. The emperor said, in the middle of the snow, Ningen and I had only gone to deliver some things to the empress, but she punished us to kneel for an entire night, the emperor sighed. She's that afraid of us getting close to the empress. Eunuch Wei was stunned. This empress should be Empress Dowager Zhuang when she was young. He'd heard His Majesty mention this before, but that wasn't what His Majesty had said at first. In the middle of the cold, she actually tricked Ningen into delivering things to her, causing Ningen to be punished by concubine mother, and even fall ill. That vicious woman can't bear to see others live a good life. These were His Majesty's original words. Why did it change now? What happened to His Majesty? The emperor suddenly realized that his head didn't hurt as much. He turned to look at Eunuch Wei. What did you say just now? No, nothing. Eunuch Wei felt that His Majesty had probably been provoked by something, and had become so strange. He had to go back and ask the little miracle doctor if His Majesty had fallen ill or been possessed. Eunuch Wei was thinking about when to leave the palace to find Gu Jiao, but he didn't expect that Gu Jiao would enter the palace by herself. Eunuch Wei ran into Gu Jiao in the imperial garden, and his eyes lit up. Miss Gu. Eunuch Wei. Gu Jiao greeted. Eunuch Wei smiled. Why are you in the palace? Are you here to visit His Majesty? Gu Jiao said. I'm here to visit Grandaunt. Ah. Eunuch Wei smiled awkwardly but politely. How could he forget that His Majesty had always suspected that Empress Dowager Zhuang had offended the little miracle doctor? Gu Jiao saw that he was hesitating and asked, What's wrong, Eunuch Wei? Is something the matter? Eunuch Wei looked around and lowered his voice. Well, this servant doesn't know how to put it. It's just that His Majesty, he's a bit. Eunuch Wei. Grand Concubine Jing's unhurried voice came from not far away. Eunuch Wei's heart skipped a beat. He quickly turned around and bowed respectfully. Grand Concubine. Granny Kai was injured and was recuperating in the nunnery. The little nun called Hui, and was accompanying Grand Concubine Jing. Grand Concubine Jing walked over with her. She looked at the two and smiled. Miss Gu has also entered the palace. I happen to be on my way to visit His Majesty. Do you want to come with me? Sure, let's go together, Gu Jiao said. Eunuch Wei's eyes widened. Didn't she say she was here to visit the Empress Dowager? Grand Concubine Jing's eyelashes trembled, as if she hadn't expected Gu Jiao to agree so readily. She stared blankly for a moment before smiling. Then let's go together. Gu Jiao and Grand Concubine Jing headed to Pure Flower's palace together. The little nun was very excited and looked around. Gu Jiao didn't know what Grand Concubine Jing was up to. She hadn't spoken much with Eunuch Wei before Grand Concubine Jing arrived. Gu Jiao had followed because she wanted to see what Grand Concubine Jing was up to. She really just wanted to take a look and didn't plan on doing anything. However, there were always accidents in this world. When Eunuch Wei crossed the threshold of the small garden, he suddenly slipped and accidentally bumped into Gu Jiao. Because it was Eunuch Wei, Gu Jiao didn't dodge. Otherwise, he would have fallen. The emperor, who had just come out of the study after approving a memorial, saw Eunuch Wei, who was by Grand Concubine Jing's side, suddenly bump into Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao received a solid bump. Although she didn't cry out in pain, the emperor could tell that the bump wasn't light. The emperor's face darkened. Mother, why did you push Eunuch Wei? Grand Concubine Jing, who hadn't even moved a finger. Digression. There will be more chapters, but you need to save up your manuscripts, especially since the number of words in the upcoming chapters will be doubled. Everyone be patient. Love you. The latest chapter isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels will be updated even faster. Millions of novels will be read for free. Novels with connotations that can't be found online can be found here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_8964286/111175279. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg. Biku Pavilion's mobile reading website. chhbqg.com. Chapter 372. The latest chapter isn't finished yet. Please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are available here. Your Majesty. Eunuch Wei wanted to say that concubine Jing didn't push him, but the emperor said coldly, "Shut up." Eunuch Wei, shut up. The emperor looked at the hurt concubine Jing. For some reason, he didn't feel any pity for her. Instead, there was a hint of resistance and doubt. I didn't. Concubine Jing didn't say this. She knew the effects of this medicine better than anyone else. Concubine Jing didn't, the nun argued. It was Eunuch Wei who lost his footing. The emperor said coldly, "Why is he the only one who lost his footing?" Eunuch Wei, it's true that I lost my footing. Concubine Jing took one last look at the emperor, clenched her handkerchief, and turned to leave. Concubine Jing. Concubine Jing. The nun had no choice but to follow. She kept looking back until she stepped out of the door, hoping that the emperor would make Concubine Jing stay. However, the emperor didn't. The emperor looked at Concubine Jing's back in a daze for a moment. But it was only for a moment before he went to the study with a serious face. Eunuch Wei was confused. He dismissed the servants and said to Gu Jiao, "Miss Gu, did you see that? Is there something wrong with His Majesty? He wasn't like this before. Did he have a fight with Concubine Jing? Or did he suffer some kind of shock?" Gu Jiao didn't answer him. Instead, she asked, "Concubine Jing really didn't push you just now?" Eunuch Wei said, "No. His Majesty made a mistake. I fell down on my own. It has nothing to do with Concubine Jing. It's really strange. When did His Majesty become like this?" "Miss Gu, you mean?" He's suddenly very cold to Concubine Jing. Eunuch Wei suddenly understood. He had been looking for a word to describe His Majesty, but couldn't come up with one. "So it was cold," he said. "Not too long ago. Yesterday, His Majesty caught Kai Mama in a fit of anger and questioned her. At night, Huiyan, who served Imperial Concubine Dowager, came to report that Imperial Concubine Dowager didn't eat or drink for the whole day. His Majesty was moved and went to visit Imperial Concubine Dowager. His Majesty was so tired that he fell asleep in the middle of his meal. When he woke up, he was already like this." "Oh, then someone must have touched the medicine in the black bottle. Godfather was right. There were really people who liked to be too smart for their own good." Eunuch Wei looked at the smile on Gu Jiao's face and felt his scalp go numb. "Miss Gu, why are you smiling?" Gu Jiao blinked. "It's nothing. He's fine. His Majesty is fine. You don't have to worry." Eunuch Wei was skeptical. "Is there really no need to worry?" Gu Jiao waved her hand. "No need, no need. His Majesty is doing very well. If there's nothing else, I'll go to my great-aunt's place first. I'll see Miss Gu out." Eunuch Wei escorted her out of Pure Flowers Palace. Gu Jiao went to Rinshou Palace. Empress Dowager Zhuang had just finished court and was reading memorials in the study. Her memorials were different from the emperor's. She read the memorials from the 6 ministries. Only those that she agreed to submit would be sent to the emperor by the ministers. Thus, the memorials that the emperor read every day were all second-hand memorials. What a miserable emperor. Gu Jiao didn't disturb her great-aunt and went to the side hall to find Eunuch Qin. Eunuch Qin was sunbathing on the grass with his little tortoise. When he saw Gu Jiao come over, his first reaction was to protect his little tortoise. Gu Jiao. Ahem. Eunuch Qin probably realized that he had overreacted and coughed awkwardly. He put the little tortoise into the pond and said to Gu Jiao, "Miss Gu, you're here? The sun is bright. Why don't you go sit in the pavilion for a while?" He would never admit that he was worried that Miss Gu would hit his little tortoise again. Although Miss Gu didn't do it on purpose, he could deeply feel that the little tortoise was scared. "That's fine." Gu Jiao didn't refuse. The two went to the pavilion and Eunuch Qin came over with tea and snacks. Gu Jiao said, "Eunuch Qin, the Empress Dowager and His Majesty were at odds even before the late emperor passed away. It wasn't until the late emperor passed away, His Majesty ascended the throne, and the Empress Dowager refused to relinquish power that they completely broke up. Eunuch Qin nodded. That's right. From the looks of it, the drug had been administered before His Majesty ascended the throne. However, the effect of the drug was not instantaneous. It had a fermenting process. It was not until His Majesty's last line was crossed when His Majesty's last line that the two of them had no way to turn back. If that was the case, then His Majesty's dislike for old concubine Jing would have to slowly deepen with each misunderstanding. Oh, I thought His Majesty would be able to get Shadow Guard Long back immediately, Gu Jiao murmured. What did you say, Miss Gu? Eunuch Qin didn't hear her clearly. Oh, nothing. There was no rush. After bullying her great-aunt for so long, she should at least collect some interest from her, Gu Jiao said without a change in her expression. I mean, didn't great-aunt suspect that someone had drugged His Majesty? Gu Jiao asked. Eunuch Qin sighed. Back then, the late emperor was seriously ill, and the Liu family and the imperial court were in chaos. Who would have thought of this? They all thought that the two of them had a dispute over the late emperor's illness. Gu Jiao paused. What's there to dispute about the illness? Eunuch Qin said. Back then, the late emperor was suffering from a head disease. The imperial physicians and doctors of Zhao country were helpless. The imperial court invited a doctor from Yan country. The doctor said that to cure the disease, the head must be opened. Gu Jiao rubbed her chin. Great-aunt advocated a craniotomy, but His Majesty didn't agree? Knowing her great-aunt's personality, she would have tried it boldly. His Majesty, on the other hand, was more conservative. Unexpectedly, Eunuch Qin shook his head. No, Miss Gu, you've guessed wrong. It was His Majesty who advocated a craniotomy, but the Empress Dowager didn't agree. There was such a thing. Gu Jiao was surprised. Eunuch Qin nodded again. That's right. But before that, the two of them had a few disputes. It's just that outsiders don't know about it. I don't remember what the first dispute was about, and neither does the Empress Dowager. It's been too many years. No matter what, in the eyes of outsiders, it was over whether or not to open the late emperor's head. Was it opened in the end? Gu Jiao was more curious about this. Eunuch Qin shook his head. No. The late emperor passed away before the two of them could reach a conclusion. Gu Jiao asked again. Then when did the Empress Dowager and concubine Jing break off their relationship? Eunuch Qin said. It was a few days before the late emperor died. The Empress Dowager and concubine Jing quarreled, and the Empress Dowager slapped concubine Jing. This old servant was waiting outside at the time, and didn't hear what they quarreled about. I only know that the Empress Dowager stopped interacting with concubine Jing after that. With her grandaunt's personality, she was willing to take any risk as long as there was a glimmer of hope. She was a woman who was braver and more decisive than men. It was one thing if the two of them didn't agree, but even the emperor agreed. How could grandaunt be more conservative than the emperor? Could it be that there was something wrong with that doctor from the Yan kingdom? Or perhaps a more daring guess was that the doctor had been hired by concubine Jing to murder the late emperor. It was just that grandaunt had found out about concubine Jing's scheme, which was why she was opposed to opening the head. The emperor, on the other hand, had been drugged and obeyed concubine Jing's every word. He had rebelled against grandaunt in every way possible, which was why he had advocated opening the head. Then, did the late emperor really die of illness? What was written in the imperial edict he left behind before he died? Empress Dowager Zhuang came over after reading the memorial. Gu Jiao saw that she was dressed properly, and looked like she was about to go out. She couldn't help but ask, Is grandaunt going out? Empress Dowager Zhuang rolled her eyes. Aren't you going to put on a show with that stupid emperor? There's no need. Gu Jiao's lips curved. It's been hard on grandaunt these past few days. In the future, grandaunt doesn't have to force yourself to put on a show with His Majesty anymore. A normal person would have asked why, but Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't ask this. She asked, Are you still giving me the candied plums? Gu Jiao spread her hands. I'm not acting anymore, so of course I'm not giving them back. Empress Dowager Zhuang's face darkened. Act. She was going to act. She was going to act as the one with 5 candied plums. Then, Empress Dowager Zhuang picked up her phoenix robe and stomped to Pure Flower's palace. Did this girl think that her acting wasn't good enough? Humph, at worst, she'd just put in a bit more effort. There were a lot of memorials today. Empress Dowager Zhuang had called him to discuss matters last night. The news that the Crown Prince Consort had solved the situation had already reached the other 5 countries. Among them, the Liang, Zhao, and Chen had all replied, expressing their admiration for the Crown Prince Consort and congratulations to the Zhao Kingdom. Moreover, the 3 countries had all sent invitations to the Zhao Kingdom's Crown Prince Consort. Empress Dowager Zhuang's original intention was for the 2 of them to get on good terms first, so that they wouldn't quarrel again in court. He didn't go. As a result, today's morning court really was full of arguments in the throne room. Some people wanted to go to the Liang Kingdom. The Liang Kingdom was a superior country, so being on good terms with it would only benefit the Zhao Kingdom. Some people wanted to go to the Zhao Kingdom. After all, old Sir Meng's hometown, Pu City, was in the Zhao Kingdom. Pu City was also known as the chess capital. There were also people who wanted to go to the Qin Kingdom. Because the king of the Qin Kingdom was about to confer the title of a new empress, the Crown Prince Consort, and the envoys would be able to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. The emperor was having a headache when a palace servant reported that Empress Dowager Zhuang had arrived. The emperor didn't think much of it, thinking that she had come to discuss this matter. He picked up his teacup and drank a mouthful of tea. In the end, he heard a forceful call from the door. Hong! The emperor's body shook, and the teacup in his hand flew out. The newest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are also updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896428226/111157352. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com BQGE's mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 373. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. This Hong is too scary. The emperor felt a tremor from his soul. If it wasn't for the fact that he was old and couldn't move, he would have thrown himself out as well. Empress Dowager Zhuang rushed into the emperor's study. Thanks to more than a year of care by Gu Jiao's side, her body was much stronger than before. Even a lot of black hair grew on her head. She sat on the chair opposite the desk, crossed her legs, and looked straight at the emperor. The emperor frowned at her bandit look. "Mother, what's the matter?" "Nothing, I just came to see you," Empress Dowager Zhuang said faintly. After she finished speaking, she realized that her attitude was perfunctory. With this kind of acting, she was afraid that she would lose some candied fruits. She paused and grinned. "I just came to see Hong." The emperor had goosebumps all over his body. In order to show her soulful acting skills, Empress Dowager Zhuang asked eunuch Qin to guard the door. At this moment, only the mother and son were in the study. Empress Dowager Zhuang shook her legs and looked at the emperor meaningfully. It was as if she saw 5 walking candied fruits. Thinking of this, Empress Dowager Zhuang felt that the emperor was much more pleasing to the eye. "Emperor, why do I feel that the way mother looks at me is not right?" Empress Dowager Zhuang decided to care about her candied fruits. No, son." She smiled rarely and said very gently, "Have you eaten? Are you thirsty? Are you hungry? Are you wearing warm clothes? How is your life? If you have any difficulties, tell mother." The emperor. Empress Dowager Zhuang took good care of the emperor. Not only that, she also accompanied the emperor to eat lunch and invited the emperor to stroll around the imperial garden to ensure that everyone in the 6 palaces knew that she was a loving mother empress today. Then she leisurely returned to Rensho Palace. "Where is Jiao Jiao?" she asked Eunuch Qin. Eunuch Qin smiled. Miss Gu left the palace. Empress Dowager Zhuang's face sank. "What about my candied fruits?" Eunuch Qin's neck shrank. She took them away." Empress Dowager Zhuang's face darkened in a second. After Gu Jiao left the palace, she did not immediately return to the medical center. Recently, the medical center had a new doctor, so she did not have to see patients every day like before. It was really convenient for her to do her own things. She had run out of saltpeter, so she planned to find some more saltpeter. Unfortunately, this kind of thing was extremely difficult to buy on the market. Gu Jiao stroked his chin thoughtfully as he walked down the street. "Doll." Suddenly, a voice called out to her. Gu Jiao stopped in her tracks. She turned her head around strangely, and saw the old beggar who had played chess with her a few times running towards her. "It's really you." The old beggar came to Gu Jiao and said with a smile, "Just now I thought you looked like you from the back, so I called you." Gu Jiao made a no sound and said, "This is not Willow Silk Street. Why are you here?" If she remembered correctly, the old beggar was active around Willow Silk Street, and this place was close to Xuanwu Street. I'm just casually walking around," the old beggar said. He held a broken beggar's bowl in his hand, and carried a basket on his back like Gu Jiao. However, his basket was also broken. Gu Jiao said, "Oh." The old beggar's face sank. "Doll, why haven't you come to play chess for several days? Am I not saving money for you?" Gu Jiao boasted shamelessly. The old beggar's mouth twitched. "You said it as if you weren't the black-hearted person who only agreed to play chess for 10 taels of silver." Gu Jiao said, "Then you can walk around. I'm leaving first." The old beggar stopped her. You're not going to play chess?" Was it easy for him to catch this little doll? Gu Jiao faintly raised her eyebrows. "Do you have money?" The old beggar held the bowl and put it on his waist. His face was full of pain. "Do you have the heart to squeeze an old man like me?" Gu Jiao nodded. "Yes." The old beggar was speechless. The old beggar took off his basket and gave it to Gu Jiao. He also gave the unused bowl to Gu Jiao. "My stall is over there. You take care of it for me. I'll be back in a while." You have a stall just to beg for food? She learned something new. After the old beggar finished giving his instructions, he left in a hurry. Gu Jiao saw him enter an alley. There was a chess club in that alley. Gu Jiao had gone there for treatment before. Gu Jiao didn't say anything. She took the old beggar's things to the so-called stall and squatted down expressionlessly. Her small body squatted there with a broken bowl in front of her. She looked a little pitiful. She didn't dress like a beggar, but the more noble a person was, the more pitiful they would be. After all, who didn't want to save face these days? If it wasn't because her family couldn't survive, why would a girl beg on the street? Everyone looked at Gu Jiao sympathetically. Gu Jiao didn't think so. She was attracted by the chess game left by the old beggar on the ground. This chess game was different from the ones she had solved before. It was very strange, but she couldn't tell what was strange about it. She began to calculate the positions of each chess piece in her mind. Clang! A copper coin was thrown into the broken bowl in front of her. Gu Jiao didn't look up and continued to play chess. Clang! Another person passed by and threw a copper coin into the bowl. Gu Jiao still didn't look up and focused on solving the game. She finally knew what was strange about this chess game. It was so murderous. How murderous was the person who created this chess game? Although chess was supposed to be a battle between two chess pieces, it was rare to see such a battle. Gu Jiao was so engrossed in the game that she didn't notice that there were many copper coins in the broken bowl. If the old beggar knew that he couldn't get more than a few copper coins in the whole day, but Gu Jiao had a full bowl without doing anything, he would probably vomit blood. "Young master, look!" On the second floor of a tea house behind Gu Jiao, a gray-clothed guard opened the window and leaned half of his body out. He pointed at Gu Jiao in front of him. The man also leaned out and looked in the direction of the gray-clothed guard's finger. He patted his fan and said, "What's there to see about a little beggar? The gray-clothed guard quickly said. No, young master, it's her. The man asked, which her? The gray-clothed guard anxiously said. The little girl who was with the little monk. The man's hand that was playing with the fan paused. The one who used the black fire bead to blow you up? Yes, young master, it's her. The gray-clothed guard scratched his head. Strange, why is she begging? The man meaningfully hooked his lips. Let's go and take a look. The gray-clothed guard closed the window and followed the man. What are you doing here? The man asked in a bad mood. The gray-clothed guard said, Didn't young master say to go and take a look? The man coldly snorted. I'm going to take a look, not you. Wasn't it exposed enough last time? The gray-clothed guard curled his lips and unwillingly stayed in the room. The man was wearing a crescent white robe with a dark blue muslin robe, and a jade belt around his waist. He looked handsome and elegant. Gu Jiao was guarding the old beggar's stall. From time to time, people would come and go, but they wouldn't stay here. The light above Gu Jiao's head dimmed. She didn't pay attention to it at first, but the shadow didn't leave after a while. She raised her head in annoyance. What came into view was a handsome face that was elegant and noble. His eyebrows were extremely deep, his nose was high, and his lips were light in color. The corners of his lips were curled up in a beautiful arc. Was this person of Hu descent? He was quite good-looking. The man showed a smile. Miss, Gu Jiao said, you're blocking the light. The man, Gu Jiao ignored him and continued to think about the game of chess. The man curiously touched the bridge of his nose. He was so good-looking, how could a girl ignore him? Was his hair messy? Or was his face dirty? Miss, he called again. However, Gu Jiao ignored him. The man stepped to the side, trying not to block Gu Jiao's light. At the same time, he also looked at what Gu Jiao was doing. It turned out that she was playing chess. It was a bit of a stretch to call it a game of chess. It was nothing more than a chessboard drawn with an old wooden board. Stones were used as chess pieces, and each of them was irregular. The black piece was just a drop of ink on the stone. The man's mouth twitched. Was she so poor? Didn't she live in Baishui Alley? That was near the Imperial College, and the house prices were very high. Moreover, he had seen the little monk's things. Any one of them could be sold at a sky-high price. If she couldn't live anymore, she could sell the little monk's things. Why beg on the street? Anyway, this girl was so poor. Did she know how to play chess? The man just glanced at the chessboard with the mentality that if she didn't know how to play, he could reluctantly teach her a thing or two. At first glance, he didn't feel much, just a bit uncomfortable. He glanced again a third time, and a fourth time. His expression froze. It couldn't be, right? Could it be that he was mistaken? How could he be here, on the street of Zhao country? To be exact, in the hands of a little beggar, a little girl, he saw this chess game. Everyone knew that the chess sage of the 6 countries, old Mr. Meng, had created countless chess games in his life. Among them, the 8 games were the most famous. There were very few people who could solve them, especially the Qianquan game. It was said that the crown princess of Zhao country recently solved the Qianquan game, becoming the person who solved the 8 games the most in the 6 countries. But no one knew that old Mr. Meng actually had another set of chess games. The Life and Death 6 games. This was truly a forbidden situation that no one could break. The reason why it was forbidden was because the murderous aura of the Life and Death 6 games was too strong. Often, before the game was solved, the player would go crazy first. He was lucky to see the first game of the Life and Death 6 games. Before he went crazy, he chose to give up. Unexpectedly, after so many years, he could see it again. Why was this girl not affected at all? She looked very relaxed. Was she not affected by the murderous aura of the chess game? The man moved his gaze away from the chess game. Gu Jiao pointed at the broken bowl in front of her. The man was stunned for a moment, then he seemed to understand. He took out 2 gold ingots and put them in the bowl. Gu Jiao finally responded. What's the matter? Sure enough, money could make the devil turn millstones, and money could make people speak. The man patted his folding fan speechlessly and said, This game. What do you think? Well, it's quite interesting, Gu Jiao said. Does it mean something? That's it. Don't you think it's difficult? Bottom? Well, it's a little difficult, Gu Jiao admitted. The man was confused. I'm asking you if it's difficult? There's a bottom at the back. What kind of freak was this girl? How could she talk about a chess game with murderous aura so lightly? No, shouldn't he be curious about where this lass learned how to play Go? The Life and Death 6 games were not like the 8 games that were widely spread in the 6 countries. They had been banned by the royal family of the Yin Kingdom. Ordinary people had never seen them. One moment, it was the black fire pearl of the royal family of the Yin Kingdom. The next moment, it was old Mr. Meng's Life and Death 6 games. What was this girl's relationship with the Yin Kingdom? Doll. The old beggar came out of the alley with the silver in his hands. The man didn't want to have too much contact with people for the time being, so he didn't want to leave any information. He turned around and went back to the tea house. The old beggar came in front of Gu Jiao, squatted down, and handed the shining silver in his hands to Gu Jiao. He laughed and said, "Doll, look, I won." Then he lowered his head and saw the broken bowl at his feet. There were 2 shining gold ingots in the bowl. In addition to the gold ingots, there were also many copper coins and pieces of silver. The old beggar was flabbergasted. This? Where did this come from? Gu Jiao thought for a moment, then said lightly, "Well, a passerby gave it to me." The old beggar looked at the bowl of gold, silver, and copper coins, and then looked at the scattered silver ingots in his hands. He suddenly felt that the silver ingots weren't very attractive. He worked so hard to play chess with a group of idiots, but in the end he didn't earn as much as the doll squatting here. Gu Jiao opened her mouth and wanted to ask him if he wanted to play chess. The old beggar raised his hand bitterly and said, "Don't talk to me first. I need to calm down. It was too painful." "Okay." Gu Jiao continued squatting by the roadside, drawing circles with a chess piece. Suddenly, a very gorgeous carriage stopped in front of them. The curtain of the carriage was opened, and a burst of fragrant wind came. Gu Jiao's nose itched and she sneezed. A female official in a pink palace dress came down from the carriage. She covered her nose with a handkerchief, stopped 3 steps away from the old beggar, and didn't go forward anymore. She didn't look at Gu Jiao squatting on the ground, but looked down at the old beggar sitting by the roadside and said, "Your Excellency, my master invites you to go to the Qingfeng gang with me." "No." The old beggar refused without thinking. The female official said, "I heard that Your Excellency was driven out of the Qinghuan Chess Club, and you can't go there to play chess from now on. My master felt sorry for Your Excellency when he heard the news." Gu Jiao took a look at the old beggar. The old man was driven out of the chess club? No wonder he changed to another chess club. The old beggar put his hands on his hips and said, "They didn't drive me out. It's me who decided to never go to that kind of rubbish chess club again. Let me pretend to lose? How can you embarrass me like that?" This was not a bluff, but the truth. He really didn't know how to lose to a group of rookies. The female official tried her best to keep her expression from collapsing. "My master sincerely invites Your Excellency to play chess. Please come with me to change your clothes and go to the Qingfeng gang to meet my master." The old beggar laughed and said, "I have to change my clothes to meet your master. Who is your master? The emperor or the empress?" The female official said seriously, "It's inconvenient to disclose the identity of my master, but it's definitely a noble identity that you can't imagine. With my master's protection, no one in the capital's chess club will dare to drive Your Excellency out." "I'm not going." The old beggar still refused without any hesitation. The female official's face showed a trace of impatience. "Your Excellency might as well consider it." The old beggar waved his hand. "I said I'm not going, so I'm not going. Aren't you annoying? You're disturbing me from playing chess with my child. Go, go, go." The female official was driven away. She coldly knitted her brows and looked at Gu Jiao, who was squatting on the ground studying the Go board. Her eyes moved. "It's her?" The female official went to a side room of the Qingfeng gang to report. Reporting to the crown princess, "He is not willing to come." "Why is he not willing to come?" The crown princess was puzzled. The crown princess had hesitated for a long time before deciding to invite that old beggar. At first, she did not pay much attention to him, but he had won against Maoshan practitioner time and time again. It was impossible for the crown princess to not pay attention to him. The female official respectfully said, "He wants to play chess with someone." "Who?" The crown princess put down the teacup in her hand and asked. The female official replied, "The daughter of Marquis Ding An's manor, the one that grew up in the countryside." The crown princess had personally seen Gu Jiao play chess with the old beggar. At that time, she did not pay much attention to it, but now, she could not help but be curious. How did she know that old beggar? The female official thought for a while and said, "I heard that the old beggar used to set up a chess game on Lusu Street. However, everyone thought that he was a lunatic, and no one went to play chess with him. Perhaps Miss Gu happened to go there, and they got to know each other." Showing her face in public and squatting on the side of the road to play chess with a beggar. Only a vulgar girl from the countryside would do such a disgraceful thing. She is the daughter of Marquis Ding An's manor and the wife of the new top scholar. Yet she does not care about her family's face at all. The crown princess cared about face. She definitely would not lower her status to interact with a beggar on the street. Forget it. It's fine if he doesn't come. The crown princess did not think too highly of him. Is there any news from old Sir Meng's side? The female official said, "There is currently no news from the country of Yin. As for the country of Liang, the country of Chun, and the country of Zhao," the crown princess cut her off and said loftily, "What I want is news from the country of Yin. What I need is old Sir Meng's attention." The newest chapter of this book is not finished. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/111149825. HTML Genius remembers this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com BQGE's mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 374. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet here. Gu Jiao played chess with the old beggar for a while, and then left. Of course, she didn't forget to take the gold ingots and work fees she earned. However, she still had some conscience and left the copper coins and silver pieces for the old beggar. It was still early, so Gu Jiao went to the Hanlin Academy. She originally planned to wait for Xiao Lulang to finish his duty, but after asking the Hanlin Academy's Kong Mu, she learned that Xiao Lulang went to the countryside again. However, this time he didn't go far. He was in the capital and could come back at night. "Thank you." Gu Jiao thanked him politely and turned to leave the Hanlin Academy. Little Jing Kong was going to play at Su Kanji's house today. She had already informed them in the morning, so she didn't need to pick him up at the Imperial College. The Su family would send him back to the medical center in the evening. Gu Jiao decided to go directly to the medical center. However, even Gu Jiao didn't expect that she would encounter some hooligans on the way back to the medical center. Gu Jiao was puzzled. There was still a long way to go before the new year. Were they open for business so early? There were a total of 6 hooligans. Judging from their clothes, they looked like bandits and refugees. However, they were strong, and they looked like they were holding knives and swords. They should have some martial arts foundation. They covered their faces with cloth and stared at her covetously. Gu Jiao thought for a while and asked, "Robbery?" With her current appearance, she couldn't be robbing, right? However, it was hard to say. Some men wouldn't care so much if they didn't have sex for a long time. Sigh. Gu Jiao wasn't interested. Gu Jiao turned and left. She didn't even want to fight. "Stop!" The leader of the hooligans shouted. Gu Jiao stopped, and the result was that the hooligans were beaten black and blue. They were crying for their parents. Gu Jiao didn't bother to report it to the authorities. With their current miserable state, it wouldn't take long for the nearby officials to be alerted, so she didn't have to do anything. Gu Jiao flicked his wide sleeves and walked back to the clinic. The reason why she chose to walk was not because she was idle, nor was it because she was distressed about the cost of hiring a carriage. It was purely because she wanted to observe the shops along the street. On the way back to the clinic, they didn't encounter any more trouble. Xiaogu, you're back. It was the second master. The business of the medical hall had improved a lot, and the orders of the pharmaceutical factory had also increased. In addition to making their own brand of medicine for wounds, Huichun Hall also made some pills that could replenish qi and blood. The second boss was so busy that he rarely bumped into Gu Jiao. Uncle Hu. Gu Jiao greeted him. What's the good news today? Second boss smiled mysteriously. Let me show you something. What? Gu Jiao asked. This. The second boss took out a dazzling golden invitation from his chest. This is something that I fought for with great difficulty. Originally, our Miracle Hand Hall had just opened and didn't have the qualifications to participate in this kind of gathering. But who told me to be so amazing? Gu Jiao still didn't understand. Thus, the second boss explained to her, and Gu Jiao finally understood. This was actually a meeting organized by the capital's Chamber of Commerce. Although the Miracle Hand Hall was a medical hall, it wasn't a welfare organization of the imperial court, so it still had the qualifications to join the Chamber of Commerce. In the Chamber of Commerce, one could seek more opportunities for development and cooperation with partners. There were official members and unofficial members. The second boss had indeed spent a lot of effort to obtain the invitation to the Chamber of Commerce. The date was next month. He also didn't expect to become an official member of the Chamber of Commerce immediately. After all, Huichun Hall had joined the ranks of the Chamber of Commerce several years ago. The first time is unfamiliar, the second time is familiar. This time we're mainly going to broaden our horizons. What do you think? The second boss asked. Okay. Gu Jiao didn't have any objections. When it came to business, she wholeheartedly trusted the second boss. It had to be said that this feeling of being trusted was very good. The second boss smiled and said, Then I'll go arrange it. Remember to clear out these few days. Gu Jiao nodded in response. All right, you go do your work. Aya. The second boss suddenly looked at Gu Jiao's sleeve and loudly shouted, You're injured. His shout was very loud, and the entire hall heard it. Even Eunuch Wei, who had just gotten out of the carriage, heard it. What happened? What happened? Who's injured? Is Miss Gu injured? Eunuch Wei anxiously ran inside and came to Gu Jiao's side. Gu Jiao lifted the sleeve that the second boss was looking at. There were indeed a few drops of blood on it, but she wasn't injured. She must have accidentally rubbed the other party's blood on her clothes when she was dealing with that group of ruffians. It's not mine, Gu Jiao said. Then what's up with the blood? Eunuch Wei pointed at her sleeve and asked worriedly. Gu Jiao made a no sound. I just ran into a few ruffians and taught them a lesson. Eunuch Wei was still worried, so he pulled Gu Jiao's wrist and used his body to block everyone else's view. He rolled up her sleeve and carefully examined it. After confirming that there were no wounds or bruises, Eunuch Wei finally let out a long sigh of relief. He helped Gu Jiao pull up her sleeve. He was a eunuch and didn't have too many barriers between men and women, but he still didn't want others to see Gu Jiao's arm in public. Eunuch Wei, why are you here? Gu Jiao asked. Eunuch Wei said, His Majesty had this servant come. His Majesty wasn't in a good mood earlier in the palace and didn't pay attention to Miss Gu. After His Majesty calmed down, he felt apologetic and ordered the imperial kitchen to make some of Miss Gu's favorite snacks. He was talking about what happened in the morning. The emperor misunderstood that Grand Concubine Jing had pushed Eunuch Wei. He was furious and had mixed feelings as he turned to enter the study. After being poisoned by the black medicine, only the bad side of that person's memory would be left. Gu Jiao was still the little miracle doctor that the emperor thought highly of. Gu Jiao accepted the snacks. Eunuch Wei returned to the palace to report and told the emperor about the attack on Gu Jiao. It was just a few ruffians. Miss Gu wasn't hurt. Ruffians of this level were most likely ruffians in the capital. It wasn't likely that they were sent by some big shot to assassinate Gu Jiao. After all, they were too weak and couldn't do any harm to Gu Jiao. However, the emperor didn't know why, but a figure suddenly appeared in his mind and couldn't be erased. A terrifying thought surged into his mind, causing him to break out in a cold sweat. Reason told him that it was impossible, but the more he thought about it, the more that thought magnified in his mind. In the end, it was as if he had been possessed, and he firmly believed in this conjecture. He slammed the booklet in his hand on the table, and went to the nunnery with a cold face. It was evening, and all the palaces had begun to have their meals. It was also dinner time in the nunnery. Green smoke was rising from the chimney of the small kitchen, adding to the atmosphere of the common people among the pavilions and terraces. The setting sun should have been a very warm scene. However, the emperor's heart was cold. "Your Majesty?" The little nun, Huiyan, who was sweeping the courtyard, saw the emperor. Her eyes sparkled as she put down the broom and bowed. The emperor didn't even look at her as he went to Grand Concubine Jing's small temple, with a cold expression. Grand Concubine Jing wasn't in the temple, but in the meditation room next door. She was sitting on the polished wooden floor with a small table in front of her. There were a few bottles and a few fresh ingredients on the table. She was using a pestle and mortar to make something in a small jar in her arms. Her left thumb was wrapped in a white gauze, and her forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat. It could be seen that she was working very hard at it. Granny Kai stayed by her side and helped her. Suddenly, the sound of heavy footsteps was heard. Granny Kai paused in her cutting of the taro, and looked at Grand Concubine Jing beside her. Grand Concubine Jing lowered her head and ate the mashed taro, as if she hadn't heard the commotion outside. Granny Kai gently placed the knife and taro on the table, intending to go over and see what was going on. She had just stood up when the emperor entered the room. He left his shoes outside the door. Granny Kai bowed. "Your Majesty." Grand Concubine Jing seemed to have finally realized that someone had come. She calmly raised her head with a gentle gaze, but there was also a hint of melancholy in her eyes. She only glanced at the emperor without saying anything, and then lowered her head to continue eating the mashed taro. "You're dismissed," the emperor coldly said to Granny Kai. Granny Kai turned her head and looked at Grand Concubine Jing, who didn't say anything. She lowered her head and said, "Yes, this servant will take her leave." Granny Kai got up and left the room. The emperor knew that she hadn't gone far and was probably listening at the door, but he didn't care that much. He suddenly sat down in front of Grand Concubine Jing and looked at the face that he had missed day and night. He said with a pained voice, "Why did you do this, mother?" Grand Concubine Jing stopped eating the mashed taro. She held the jar in one hand and the pestle and mortar in the other. Her eyes were full of confusion. "What did I do?" The emperor stared at Grand Concubine Jing without blinking, and his hands on his knees slowly clenched. "Mother, don't play the fool anymore. There's no such thing as an impenetrable wall in this world. Mother, you know very well what you did." "I know very well what I did. Your Majesty, if you want to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext." Grand Concubine Jing said indifferently as she angrily threw the pestle and mortar into the jar. She then placed the jar on the table indifferently. There wasn't a trace of guilt on her face, so logically speaking, she really shouldn't have done anything. However, the emperor's suspicions were like bamboo shoots after a spring rain. They had grown on the way here, and had grown even more when he saw her in person. The emperor said seriously, "Very well. If mother wants to hear it, then I'll tell you. The young divine doctor was attacked today and almost got injured. If it wasn't for her quick wits and skills, she would have been killed." Grand Concubine Jing was surprised. "So your Majesty believes that I was the one who instigated this? Wasn't that the case?" the emperor asked with gritted teeth. "Why would I do that?" Grand Concubine Jing asked. The emperor sneered. "Why? I want to ask you why, mother. Is it that as long as it's someone Zhen likes, Imperial Mother will drive them away from Zhen's side? You used to be Mother Zhuang, and now you're the young divine doctor. In Mother's heart, I can't get close to anyone other than you." Grand Concubine Jing suddenly raised her voice. "I've never thought of it that way." The emperor's lips curled up in a mocking smile. "Is that so? Then why did Mother stop me from seeing Mother? When did I? Grand concubine Jing paused mid-sentence. The emperor looked at her coldly. Mother, you remember now, don't you? To be honest, I've forgotten about it as well, but I suddenly remembered it a few days ago. Ningen and I secretly went to the cold palace to visit Mother, and she punished us by making us kneel in the snow for an entire night. Ningen fell seriously ill because of it. Grand concubine Jing closed her eyes and explained patiently, "That's because I didn't want noble consort Lu to have something on me. The empress didn't want you to visit her in the cold palace either. She didn't want to implicate you, and neither did I. The son was hurt, and the mother was hurt. How could I not feel bad when you were kneeling in the snow?" The emperor said indifferently, "Is that so? I don't remember Mother feeling bad at all." Grand concubine Jing clenched her fists. Outside the room, Granny Kai was so anxious that she felt suffocated. She knew the situation at the time. Grand concubine Jing punished His Majesty, and Ningen, while tears welled up in her eyes, anyone could tell that she couldn't bear it. Yet, the emperor said that he didn't remember. That pill, it must be that pill. Whatever you say, Your Majesty. Grand concubine Jing lowered her eyes, her expression and tone filled with hurt. Your Majesty. Granny Kai couldn't help but walk in and kneel. Grand concubine wouldn't do that. She's someone who can't even bear to step on an ant. Why would she send someone to assassinate Miss Gu? Endless mockery flashed through the emperor's eyes. Can't even bear to step on an ant? Then who was it that beat my fucking to death back then? Grand concubine Jing's pupils shrank. What did you say? The emperor said coldly. I said Mother beat my fucking to death. Fucking was a name so long ago that no one in the palace remembered his existence. He was the one who served the emperor when he was young. After his death, the emperor had eunuch Wei by his side. However, fucking was bribed by noble consort Lu to frame the emperor several times. Even death couldn't wipe out his crimes. Moreover, it wasn't Grand concubine Jing who ordered him to be beaten to death. It was the virtuous Empress Zhuangjin's. All of you look carefully. This is the consequence of betraying your master for glory. Your Majesty. Your Majesty, please save this servant. This servant knows her mistake. Mother. Execute her. It was Zhuangjin's who did it, so why was she blamed? Grand concubine Jing's hands clenched into fists. She was using so much force that her knuckles turned white. Granny Kai choked. No, Your Majesty. It wasn't Grand concubine. The emperor didn't look at Nanny Kai at all. Instead, he stared at concubine Jing with blazing eyes. Fine. Mother won't admit to the matter of the young divine doctor or fucking, but Mother won't be able to get away with Yu Ro's matter. Yu Ro, concubine Ro. When the emperor was still a prince, he went to Jiangnan with the previous emperor and brought back a beauty. After ascending the throne, he made her concubine Ro. Concubine Ro died in childbirth. The emperor gritted his teeth. The day before concubine Ro passed away, Mother summoned her to her chambers. What did Mother say to concubine Ro that caused her to give birth prematurely? In all honesty, Grand concubine Jing didn't summon concubine Ro. It was concubine Ro who came to pay respects to Grand concubine Jing. As for why she gave birth prematurely, it had nothing to do with Grand concubine Jing. Grand concubine Jing looked at the emperor in disbelief, her fingernails digging into her flesh. Once she got used to someone treating her well, she would forget that it was because of a pill. She even had the confidence and misconception that he would still treat her well even after the effects of the pill wore off. Don't touch the young divine doctor again. Don't touch anyone around me, and don't waste the last bit of our mother-son relationship. The emperor said coldly, stood up, and walked away without looking back. Grand concubine Jing was so angry that she swept the jar on the table to the floor. It was the mashed taro she had been making all afternoon. She had planned to make taro puffs for the emperor. The emperor liked the pastries she made. He liked all of them, such as jujube puffs, taro puffs, osmanthus puffs, and thousand-layer puffs. Your Highness. Granny Kai felt wronged. The Grand concubine's hand was injured because of the mashed taro. Grand concubine Jing looked at her bandaged thumb and murmured, "He didn't even notice that my hand was injured." A person who had been treated with care had suddenly become someone who didn't care about anything. The difference was huge. Granny Kai said with heartache, "Your Highness, I've already advised you, but it's useless. You might as well not do anything." Grand Concubine Jing's eyes were deep. Zhuang Jin's didn't do anything back then. I've often wondered why she didn't do anything. Didn't she want to redeem herself? She didn't know that His Majesty was drugged. How could she be so ruthless and so proud? How could she let it go so easily? When Zhuang Jin realized that this son of hers was no longer close to her, she didn't ask him to stay. She flew away like a proud phoenix without any reluctance. She left so decisively and straightforwardly, as if she had never loved this son of hers. Grand Concubine Jing clutched at her heart, which felt like a sharp knife was stabbing at it. Isn't she sad? Granny Kai sighed inwardly. How could she not be sad? It's just that her personality is like that. She'd rather be sad until she dies than beg for pity from anyone. She was like this to the late emperor and to His Majesty. How many sleepless nights must Zhuang Jin have had where she could only lick her wounds in the dark? She might have been in pain, cried, and torn apart, but she wouldn't let anyone see her weakness. She was no longer the Zhuang Jin of the past from the moment she turned the late emperor's harem into her own. Grand Concubine Jing returned to her room and took out the imperial edict. Granny Kai's expression changed. "Your Highness, what are you doing? Don't be rash. The latest chapter isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/111128876. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion Mobile Reading Website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 375. The latest chapter isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are available here. Grand Concubine Jing gripped the imperial edict with a cold expression. Granny Kai grabbed her arm and dropped to her knees. She was so scared that her face turned pale, and her voice trembled. "Your Highness, I'm on my knees. Please don't be impulsive. His Majesty is just momentarily blinded. Wait a while. His Majesty will be fine after a while." Naturally, this was just a consolation, but Granny Kai couldn't think of any other way. "I'm begging you, please put the imperial edict back. Please put it back. You don't only have His Majesty. You still have Princess Ning'an. Please don't be impulsive. Please think for the princess." Grand Concubine Jing was dazed. "Ning'an won't be able to come back in this lifetime. She won't be able to, she won't." Granny Kai sobbed and shook her head. The Empress Dowager said that as long as the princess dared to marry, she wouldn't be able to come back for the rest of her life. She was just angry. The Empress Dowager loves the princess so much. If the princess really wanted to come back, how could the Empress Dowager refuse her? Grand Concubine Jing murmured, "Can Ning'an come back?" "Yes, yes." Granny Kai looked at Grand Concubine Jing's dazed expression and stood up quietly. She carefully reached out to hold one end of the imperial edict. "Your Highness, please give the imperial edict to me. I'll put it away for you. I'll grind the ink for you later. Your Highness, please send a letter home to the princess and say that you miss her." Grand Concubine Jing looked confused. "Write a letter to Ning'an." Granny Kai slowly pulled the imperial edict out of her hand. "Yes. Yes, Your Highness. Write a letter to Princess Ning'an. You haven't written a letter home for this month yet." Grand Concubine Jing didn't resist in the end and let her hand fall. Granny Kai took the imperial edict in her hand and let out a long sigh of relief. She quickly put the edict in another secret compartment. The previous secret compartment had been exposed, and this one was under the floorboards. Granny Kai was afraid that Grand Concubine Jing would change her mind, so she quickly went to the study to get a brush, ink, paper, and inkstone. Your Highness. No matter what, she had to divert the imperial concubine's attention. Grand Concubine Jing raised her brush indifferently. In the darkness of the night where no one could see, she closed her eyes and a tear fell. Xiao Lulang went to the countryside, little Jing Kong went to the Su Kanji house, and Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshan went to learn martial arts again. Gu Jiao felt that it would be unreasonable if she did not do something secretly at such a perfect time. She infiltrated Marquis Ding and Manor. Marquis Ding and's manor was as quiet as usual. Originally, Gu Qinglin was a little noisy, but a few days ago, Marquis Gu did not have a carriage. Walking from the countryside to the capital, he nearly broke his legs. When he returned home, he fell ill. Today, Gu Qinglin was taking care of his father in his courtyard. This just so happened to be convenient for Gu Jiao. After all, Gu Qinglin and Gu Qingfeng lived in the same courtyard. It was never a bad thing to have one less person watching over them. Gu Jiao entered Gu Qingfeng's courtyard with ease. Gu Qingfeng was taking a bath. As he soaked, he sang an opera in the wooden tub. Gu Jiao did not understand opera, but for some reason, she felt that his voice was quite pleasant to listen to. In the sky, the wild geese soar hearing the slave's voice, the shadow falls on the painting screen. Gu Qingfeng was very engrossed in singing. His voice was mellow, his voice melodious, and his gestures were full of charm. You can sing a female voice? Gu Jiao bent down and whispered into his ear. The tone of this sentence was so casual that it was as if he was greeting an acquaintance on the street. However, the reality was that Gu Qingfeng was in his own room, bathing, singing an opera, and not wearing a single stitch of clothing. In order to not be heard by others, he specially chose a time when Gu Qinglin was not in the courtyard and dismissed all the servants. Thus, he did not expect that he would be disturbed. Saying that he was disturbed was not enough. This was simply a shock. Gu Qingfeng fell into the water with a plop and almost choked himself to death. When he held onto the edge of the wooden tub and sat up, he did not know how many mouthfuls of his bathwater he had drunk. He grabbed the towel hanging on the wooden tub to cover a certain unspeakable part. He was so panicked that his hair stood up in the tub. Why did you come in the middle of the night? And you specifically chose to come when I was bathing. Do you have some strange fetish? Last time it was in the toilet, and this time it was in the bathtub. Gu Qingfeng seriously suspected that she did it on purpose. Gu Jiao spread her hands. I didn't know that you were the one singing the opera. Who asked you to sing an opera when you were bathing? And a female one at that. Gu Qingfeng's face turned red. Sheng Dan is clean and ugly, it's whatever I sing. Do you understand? I don't understand. Gu Jiao said bluntly. Gu Qingfeng gritted his teeth. Get out. Oh. Gu Jiao turned around, opened the door and walked out. She had already crossed the threshold when suddenly a small head popped in. It's quite nice. Gu Qingfeng. Shut up. Last time, when he pretended to be an assassin to frame Nanny Kai, Gu Qingfeng had used a voice that was completely different from his usual voice. Gu Jiao did not take it to heart at that time. She only thought that they were professional thieves. Not only could they hide their appearance, but they could also disguise their voice. But tonight, when she heard it, it was not a fake voice. He could really change his voice. Hey, what other voices do you know? Gu Jiao asked after Gu Qingfeng came out of the room with a gloomy face. None, Gu Qingfeng said in a bad mood. Gu Jiao? Gu Qingfeng thought that she had given up. She suddenly asked again. Do you know a lowly voice? Then, mature voice? Teenager voice? Queen voice? Gu Qingfeng stopped and looked at her in confusion. Although I don't know what you are talking about, but when did you become so talkative? Isn't little Jing Kong the only little loudspeaker spirit in your family? Gu Jiao blinked and stopped pestering him to change his voice. She took out a copper coin from her pouch and handed it to him. What is it? Gu Qingfeng asked. Gu Jiao said, a tip for you. Gu Qingfeng. The two left the courtyard and walked forward at a moderate pace. However, The old duke was not around and most of the secret guards in the residence were not around either. When they passed by a small wooden house, Gu Chengfeng said, "If you want to see me in the future, can you let me know in advance? Or, you can at least knock on the door." Today, she only saw him bathing and singing. What if one day, he was a man and it would be inconvenient for him to be seen by others? Oh, is that so? Gu Jiao raised her hand and knocked on the door of the small wooden house. Creak! The door of the small wooden house opened. Both of them were stunned. No one expected that there would be someone here, and the person who walked out was Gu Changqing. Both of them were wearing night clothes and holding masks in their hands. When Gu Chengfeng saw his eldest brother, he put on his mask and ran away with his lightness skill. Gu Changqing frowned. Who is it? However, Gu Chengfeng's figure had already disappeared. Did someone pass by here just now? Gu Changqing asked. Gu Jiao shrugged. I don't think so. That guy wasn't human. She didn't want to say that. Gu Changqing stopped looking around and looked at Gu Jiao in confusion. It's so late. Why are you here? Where are you going wearing night clothes? Gu Jiao. Well, Gu Changqing asked. Are you looking for me? Gu Jiao thought for a while. That's fine too. Gu Changqing. What do you mean that's fine too? Is it true or not? I want to steal an imperial edict, Gu Jiao said bluntly. No one would believe her if she said she was here for a walk since they had already seen her. Gu Changqing was shocked. What imperial edict? Why do you want to steal one? Gu Jiao said calmly. Concubine Jing has an imperial edict. I want to steal that. Gu Changqing looked at Gu Jiao suspiciously. How do you know she has an imperial edict? Did you investigate her before? Did you steal something from her? Gu Jiao blinked innocently. Gu Changqing sucked in a cold breath. You're crazy. She has shadow dragon guards with her. You'll die if you go near her. Gu Jiao blinked but didn't say anything. Gu Changqing suddenly couldn't get angry. No, he was still angry. It's too dangerous. Don't do this alone in the future. Of course, he didn't know that Gu Jiao had dragged Gu Chengfeng along. Gu Changqing asked, When did you go? Gu Jiao thought for a while. The day before yesterday? Gu Changqing frowned. Did you alarm her? Gu Jiao nodded. Yes. Gu Changqing sucked in a cold breath again. Did this girl know what she was doing? She had managed to escape unscathed after alarming her. Should he say that she was lucky or lucky? Moreover, it had only been a few days and she dared to go again? Was this girl's guts made of iron? Gu Changqing didn't know what to say. He face-bombed. It's too dangerous to steal an imperial edict now. Moreover, she might move it. Do you know what imperial edict it is? Gu Jiao shook her head. I didn't have time to see it. Gu Changqing said thoughtfully. Could it be the imperial edict that the late emperor issued before his death to bury Empress Dowager Zhuang? Gu Changqing's reaction was the same as Gu Chengfeng's, which wasn't strange. After all, the matter of concubine Jing stealing the imperial edict and burning it had caused a great uproar. Although the emperor had suppressed the news that should have leaked had already spread among the noble families. If concubine Jing had an imperial edict, Gu Changqing could only think of this imperial edict. Gu Changqing said, Leave the imperial edict to me. Don't act rashly. It's important to deal with her, but your safety is more important. Gu Changqing couldn't bring himself to say such mushy words. The night wind was a bit strong, and Gu Jiao's ahog stood up again. Gu Changqing raised his hand and gently pressed down her ahog. Once he let go, it stubbornly stood up again. Gu Changqing suddenly wanted to laugh. He thought of Gu Yan. As expected of a boy phoenix twin. Even the ahog on her head was as stubborn. He gently rubbed her head. I'll send you back. Gu Jiao said. Oh. Gu Changqing sent Gu Jiao out of the manor through the main entrance. He had someone prepare a carriage for Gu Jiao to sit in. And they left Marquis Ding En's manor openly. The carriage stopped at Bai Shui Alley. You enter the room first. Gu Changqing said to Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao suppressed the urge to steal the imperial edict and slowly entered the room. Gu Changqing went over to the old chancellor's side. The old chancellor was inspecting the candied fruits in the kitchen. That's right. The candied fruits given to Grandaunt every day were all personally made by the old chancellor. They tasted better than the ones on the market. More importantly, they had less sugar and were healthier. The old chancellor met with Gu Chongqing in the study room. Gu Chongqing stated the purpose of his visit. The old chancellor stroked his beard. "You're saying, it's very likely that imperial concubine Jing didn't burn the imperial edict? That's strange. She and Zhuang Jin's were irreconcilable. If she really had an imperial edict ordering Zhuang Jin's death, why didn't she take it out earlier?" Gu Chongqing said. "Could it be a trump card to threaten the Empress Dowager?" The old chancellor pondered for a moment and said, "Why would she want to threaten Zhuang Jin's? Wouldn't it be better to just kill her? Whatever Zhuang Jin's could give her, His Majesty could also give her. On the contrary, because of Zhuang Jin's restriction, His Majesty's power was greatly reduced and he gave her less. So no matter how you look at it, killing Zhuang Jin's was the best choice for her." Gu Chongqing asked, "Could it be that the imperial edict didn't say that the Empress Dowager was to be buried with her?" The old chancellor frowned. "But if it wasn't for Zhuang Jin's to be buried with her, then what would it be?" Gu Chongqing had a headache. There isn't a third living person who has seen the imperial edict. No one knows what was written on it. The old chancellor's eyes lit up. "No, maybe there is one person who knows." Gu Chongqing looked at him in confusion. The old chancellor said, "Princess Ning and Gu Chongqing, her?" The old chancellor said, "She is imperial concubine Jing's daughter and the closest person to her in the world. Maybe she has seen the imperial edict." Gu Chongqing hesitated for a moment and said, "But she is far away at the frontier fortress. Even if she has seen it, she won't be able to come back for a while. Send someone to ask her and get the news back a long time later. Moreover, she might not say it." If Princess Ningen had really seen it and didn't mention a word about the imperial edict after so long, then there was only one possibility: she couldn't mention it. Gu Chongqing sighed. Could it be that no one else knows the contents of the imperial edict? Maybe. There is one more, the old chancellor said. Who? Gu Chongqing asked. The old chancellor looked at the west room next door with a complicated expression. Xiaoheng's mother, Princess Xinyang. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964226/111127520. HTML Genius remembered the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion Mobile Reading Website. zhbqg.com. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.